Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 266. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the returning sensei of the Whatnot segment. Actually, we had a couple recordings while you were gone in Italy, where you weren't on the show, and it's good to have you back, buddy.
It's good to be back.
We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network and the League of Comic Book Podcasts. On this episode, we're going to be discussing the news coming out of San Diego. This is that time of the year. This is usually when, comic companies in general are announcing, the big events that are going to be going on over the next year, the big stories, the big creators that are going to be coming on, new books, new titles. This is obviously a special one for all of us because, we're getting more facts, more information about these relaunch titles. They're keeping mysteries and secrets still there for us as well. But, the things that people are nervous about, they're really kind of clarifying. If you haven't had a chance, I highly recommend listening to the DC panel podcasts that are over at dccomics.com, and you get it from iTunes. It's the official DC Comics podcast. We're going to be discussing these panels, but rather than regurgitate them, we're going to be giving our reactions to the news. So if you want to actually hear the real panels, I can't recommend them enough. I really enjoy hearing the panels when DC does them. It's almost like I'm there. Our sponsors this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, hurry. It's your chance to get all 52 number one DC titles at that special discount. $79.74. That's 50% off the regular price of $159.48. And I want to thank DCBService.com for providing us with that awesome discount this month. In August, we're going to have League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 1. Alan Moore, Kevin O'Neill. It's regularly $14.95, 38% off, only $9.27. And we're going to be discussing that in August. So please make sure to pick that book up and join us for that discussion. We are nearing the final days for our show summer contest. What do superheroes do in the summer? These can be serious or parodies. Tell us what your favorite hero or villain does during summer vacation. This can be a song, comic strip, Photoshop picture. It can be any character from the past or present, and even have some fun with that upcoming reboot over this one. First prize is going to be the choice of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Omnibus or the Legends of Dark Knight Marshall Rogers hardcover. The second prize is going to get the alternate book. Third prize is going to get a choice from our listener and show-donated comic and trade prize bag. So entries are due by the last day of July in any time zone and should be emailed to ragingbullets@gmail.com with the heading Summer Contest. I've already gotten some entries. It's a great opportunity to get some free omnibus-style books. It's great, with that League of Extraordinary Gentlemen one and, of course, the Marshall Rogers book. Terrific. So just some great opportunities for you guys to get those books for free. Please consider entering. I already have some entries, and I would love to have more listeners involved in that one. So thanks for everyone who's already entered the contest, though. There's some very funny stuff coming up, and we'll actually be shouting it out on the show when the contest is over. So actually, which should be our next episode. So thanks again. James, what kind of a podcast are we?
The Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in depth into plot lines, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on the show. So, if you haven't read the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
You kind of switched that up a little bit.
A little bit.
A little different than you normally do. Did you write that out different this time or something? Or what's?
Yes. Actually, I did write it out. I'm tweaking it, having a little fun with it, changing here and there. It's
a little catchy. I caught it. I'm impressed with your work ethic. Let's talk some comics.
Carter Hall, scientific genius from a far-off world, flies into action as Hawkman.
Jim, San Diego's here, and I'm first of all, welcome back from Italy. It's good to have you back, buddy.
It's good to be back. Italy was an amazing trip, and I am in the process of recording some of my more funny adventures and, get them to share to everybody. But this was just a great time, and I'm so glad I did it again, and so glad I got to, travel around with with both my brothers and my one niece, Cassie. So it was just an amazing experience.
big news coming out of San Diego, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of just casually go through. First of all, if anybody listening hasn't had a chance, over at DC Comics website, dccomics.com, they have all the podcasts of the panels that were there, plus sites like Newsarama, Comic Book Resources, Comic Related, all the major comic book websites out there have coverage of what's been going on at the panels. So we're not going to regurgitate the panels. We're just going to kind of go through maybe superhero families first, and then we'll finish some of this up on our next episode as well, because you and I haven't had a chance to actually listen to all the panels yet, because there's been 17 or 18 of them released. So I've been going through as they've been released gradually and listening, as I know you have. But I wanted to start talking about the Bat family first, if we could, and what's going on there, because on the surface, it sounds like it's been untouched, but there have been some changes, in the sense that, let's talk about Batgirl, Barbara Gordon. We know now that she will have been in the wheelchair. So Killing Joke has not been written out of continuity. That's in continuity. But she's younger. So I wonder, did she become Oracle or not? And and that's not something I need to know right now. I actually really like the fact that this is going to be a girl who is rehabbing from that injury that actually did happen to her, versus going the easy route and just magic wanding it, if that makes sense. I'm glad that story wasn't taken out of continuity. I actually appreciate the fact that Gail Simone took on the challenge. I don't know who made that decision, if she did or if it was something that was done in the editorial, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm very interested to see how she winds up getting out of the wheelchair.
Yeah, that was something that like a lot of people were wondering what was going to happen, with when we heard Barbara Gordon was going to be Batgirl. That was the first thing that had popped in everybody's head. What happens to Oracle? And what happens to that great story, The Killing Joke? Well, we're seeing that it happened again. And I took it that there was a period where she was doing the Oracle thing. I'm just kind of guessing that, for part of the time she was Oracle, but then as she, was, struggling through her personal life, struggling through the hero life, this is just a character where we're still going to see that strong will that we all love in Barbara Gordon in this Batgirl. In this even younger version, she's a college student dealing with the hero stuff, but there's going to be still that strength of character that we all loved in Barbara Gordon, in Oracle. And we're seeing that in this Batgirl. I'm definitely really excited and curious and just eagerly anticipating what we're going to get.
Well, see, for me, the important thing is you got a writer on there who clearly understands who Barbara Gordon is. And I'm shocked at how excited I am about this. Not because, obviously I'm excited because Gail Simone's writing Batgirl, but I'm an Oracle junkie. So I guess anytime it was ever discussed that there was a possibility she could walk again or go back, I always assumed it was going to be a progression from where she was with Birds of Prey and everything that happened to her then, and she might, because there's been teases of her getting feeling back in her feet and stuff like that. So, the question was that eventually going to lead to her possibly walking again, possibly being an active operative again? I don't know. And it's interesting to see it have gone this route instead. I am excited. It's been one of those things, the more news I've heard, it's funny how I was excited either way. Whether she was in the wheelchair or not, I was excited about this one. And it is mainly due to the writer, because I know she gets Barbara Gordon. She gets what's cool about the character. And I don't think because she's younger we're going to lose the core concepts that have made her cool as Oracle. I don't think the identity of Oracle, very similar to Dick Grayson. I don't think him being Batman or him being Nightwing defines Dick Grayson. It's who the character is at his core that defines him. So in a very similar way, I'm excited about Barbara Gordon because of the writer writing that book, because I think we're still going to have the same character. Yeah, a little younger, and yeah, she's going to be Batgirl again, but I think what Gail Simone's going to bring to the table is a lot of the unique qualities, like a hybrid of what made her cool as Batgirl and what made her cool as Oracle. So you're going to have some of those unique qualities that you got to see before, and it's going to make her a very unique experience, and we're going to see a lot of the fun of Batgirl. So I'm thrilled and excited about that book because of it. I give her a lot of credit for writing in a story where we're not ignoring what happened in Killing Joke, because to me I think that's a little bit more of a challenge.
And I like the fact that Stephanie Brown kept coming up multiple times throughout this, and Stephanie Brown's still going to be around in the universe. They haven't said how, but I think Gail even said she's a fantastic character, and I don't think she'll be lost. So I'm guessing we're going to see Stephanie around the Batgirl universe, some type of involvement there. Now, we still haven't gotten any definite how and where she's going to be, but they did give a yes or no answer. Will she be in the universe? And they said yes. So that's going to be curious to see where she comes into play and how they use her.
What about coming back as Spoiler?
Definitely we could see Spoiler coming back. And I don't know if would she come through as Spoiler, the hero kind of character. Would they make her darker? What would they do with her? I don't know.
Would you go for her as a new identity?
Yes and no. On one hand, I see part of the thing that I thought was cool when she became Batgirl, there was still some nod to Spoiler. There was still some connection to who she was before in this current version of her. So, and I liked Spoiler. I liked just the whole concept behind what she was doing and the fact that her father was, Clue Master, and I liked her whole connection to everything and how her interaction with Tim and just how she came about. So, for me, yes, I want to see Stephanie around because she's a great character, but I don't want to lose what made her cool.
Yeah, well, see, I guess I wasn't saying. I think you're misunderstanding me. I'm saying if you showed that there was some, and I guess this is kind of tricky because how do you take a character like Stephanie, put her back in, and say there's been progression, meaning that she was Spoiler at one point, but now she's this new character. It's almost like you want to, go through some of the Spoiler journey again, to a certain extent. I don't know. Maybe mature her as Spoiler in that role. I don't know. I'm very curious to see how she would be used. I think she's a terrific character for the reasons you said. So I wasn't saying to give any of that up. I was saying, is there another role for her other than Spoiler? Could she grow beyond Spoiler to something else, a la her own Nightwing or Red Robin or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they could do it, but the fact that Barbara is going to be younger, I would think you would have to make Stephanie younger. So we're looking at a high school age Stephanie Brown. So for that, I would say she's Spoiler again. And I would actually put her down, make her Spoiler, and have Spoiler be interacting with Batgirl instead of Spoiler interacting with Red Robin, Tim Drake.
Sure.
And yeah, actually, they could even have Stephanie and Tim having some type of interaction. They could keep that little connection that they had, but I don't know. I see it more of her interacting with Barbara, and maybe you think about the character Misfit, who was around for a while in Birds of Prey. Maybe that kind of relationship with Barbara Gordon, where she wants to become the next Batgirl, and Oracle's like, hey, Barbara's like, hey, relax, slow your roll down here. Look what happened to me. I don't want the same thing to happen to you. Kind of, action.
Now, with Bruce Wayne, it's interesting to see that he'll technically have been around longer than some of the heroes, which does fit his history anyway for us. He really did predate like Hal Jordan and stuff like that in his presentation. Same thing with Superman. So they're really going back to the roots of like Superman being the first superhero, then Batman coming on the scene being like this urban, and I like the idea of them playing off him being an urban legend. That's something that's very interesting to me. For that character, but, keeping in all the progression, or, most of the progression that we know from Batman. Because, I personally think the Bat books have been absolutely terrific. And I mean, not just the Batman titles, meaning the ones featuring Bruce and Dick, but all of the satellite titles that have gone along with them, like Birds of Prey, stuff like that, Batgirl. Absolutely terrific. Red Robin, we loved Azrael. These have been just great, great books. So I'm glad to see a lot of that's going to be in place, except for obviously, I'm guessing. Now, are you taking this? Because this really hasn't been clarified, and I don't need to know this right now. We'll find out what happens with Birds of Prey #1. I'm guessing Birds of Prey did not happen because Barbara's so young, right?
See, on one hand, I was thinking they could do it. But then, when you start throwing out the youngness of Barbara, that actually even throws against the whole Oracle thing. I think if Barbara never was Oracle, then Birds never happened. I think that's the linchpin. If they made Barbara Oracle while she was recovering in the chair, then she could have very easily have done Birds of Prey and just they would never have seen how young she is, and the communication would have been done completely through the computer.
Well, and they could have compressed, like very similar to the compressing Batman's timeline, because, all this stuff apparently happened in 5 years.
Right.
You know, what they're saying, because they're going back to Action Comics to 5 years earlier from the current continuity. So that would mean that everything with Batman happened in a compressed timeline of 5 years, and they joked around that Robin was an internship program almost. But I mean, it's a little suspension of disbelief, but I'm okay with that. I have no problem with that. So that means there is a possibility Birds of Prey did happen during that time. So I could go either way on that. And honestly, I don't know that I have a preference of knowing that right now. I'm very curious in September to see what Oracle's status quo was. Was she Oracle?
Yeah, I don't know. Part of me was always saying yes, she was still Oracle while she was recovering, and then on the other hand, I'm like, would she have the time to do it? And the other thing that popped
look what Bruce did in 5 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there is a little bit of leeway there. Plus, also the other thing I was thinking is, what if Tim, when he initially steps down as Robin, steps into the Oracle shoes, and he continues on Oracle, because he's the same type of mindset that I could see his character becoming Oracle, and then having to step away from Oracle for Teen Titans.
Well, I think what they're trying to do, though, Jim, is, I think they're stepping away from the whole Oracle thing, and this does make sense. It's, for a while there, and this is the way that I've heard it explained, Bruce was relying heavily on Oracle, for the information, stuff like that, and this is about getting him back to doing the detective work. So I don't know that we're going to have, although this is Tim stepping away from the Oracle role, I get what you're saying. I don't think Tim's going to be stepping away from any role other than being the Robin that we know. And Tim as Robin has been a computer guy. I mean, he's been the one that gets in there and does that detective work. So I don't see Tim as being in any more of an Oracle role. I think Tim's going to be in the role we've always known him as.
The only reason why I throw it out there is because if you think back to the early teaser, they say Tim Drake steps away from the computer to help a team of young heroes. Okay. And that's the reason why Oracle is stuck in my head as a possibility for Tim.
So he was on the shelf is what we're saying here.
Well, what I think is, if you look at like an internship program or a temporary program, with the Robins, when Tim's, some of Tim's crisis was going on with his parents, with his father dying, with identity crisis, with everything that's gone on, maybe instead of flying solo as Robin, he stepped off the shelf. Or maybe that's when Barbara started getting better, and they're like, hey, she's going back to Batgirl. Okay, well, Tim said, hey, I'll step into that role. That's what I'm thinking. And then add to it the fact that Damien's showing up on the scene. Tim's like, hey, I'm out of here. So I think that's where I think it could fit in.
Did you get, as long as we're talking about Tim, let's just jump into talking about Teen Titans, and we can kind of organically jump back to the Bat books, because I do want to talk about Nightwing and him going back to that role. We had some clarification of what's going on with Teen Titans, and Teen Titans is a full reboot. Scott Lobdell, who's writing Superboy and Teen Titans, said that this is the same Connor Kent up till Teen Titans. So Teen Titans did not happen. Wonder Girl, on the other hand, seems to be a new Wonder Girl. It's Cassie, but a new role for her, in the sense that what they're trying to do, and I liked the explanation for this, and I get it. They said over the years we've had a lot of repeats of characters. And they're trying to get away from that, and they're trying to, give characters their own unique presence and their own unique story and stuff like that. You and I are both huge Titans fans. Loved the Jeff Johns run when it kicked off. I go back to Wolfman and Perez straight on through. But it's interesting how that's been the book I've been the most worried about. And the more I'm hearing about it, the more I'm getting excited about it. Are you in that same boat, or are you tentative on it? Because we're getting a full reboot here. These Titans did not meet each other. This is going to be the first meeting between Red Robin and Superboy, or Robin and Superboy. Actually, it is Red Robin in this case. That is Tim. Tim and Connor. And Bart. The three amigos are coming back together again on this team, and we're going to be getting more characters on that team. They said there's going to be a diverse lineup of characters on there, and Wonder Girl. on that team. How do you feel about that being completely rebooted?
Well, one of the things that I am going back and forth on Teen Titans. One of the things they said that the original Teen Titans back in the day did happen. This is just this new version. So it's kind of like Young Justice never really happened. This is Young Justice. This is that all over again, and basically the rebirth of what was a great story and a great team. So there is that excitement in the fact that I'm going to chance to see those stories again that I enjoyed. So I'm like, okay, I like these people teaming up. I like when they start getting together. I always enjoy that. I think back to Young Justice, the animated series. I'm enjoying that interaction between them as they get to know each other. So for me, this is kind of like another way of looking at that. So on one hand, I'm sitting there saying, this could be good. And then on the other hand, I always am a little bit nervous when adults are writing children and when adults are writing kids. And they even commented a couple times on how they really wanted to make these characters feel like they were teenagers, like they were teen heroes. And I always question, can an adult write and think like a kid? I know I personally
Hold on. Back up. No, wait. Hang on, though. Because I think you're contradicting yourself, though. Because didn't you think Jeff Johns did that when he was writing his run?
Yes. Hold on. That's one.
Okay.
That's why. Let me just finish here. I know, and part of my hesitation is because I know I couldn't do that, but I'm not a talented writer. Jeff Johns, he pulled it off, and there's been a lot of writers who've written teenagers and have pulled it off, and maybe say, "Wow, this is awesome."
McKeever did too. I really liked McKeever's run,
and even a completely different book. Gail did it over
Gen 13.
Gen 13, thank you. She did a wonderful job with the teenage mindset and just everything there. So,
and also hold on. Actually, talking about her as well. Welcome to Tranquility. The Tranquility. Yeah. I mean, everything that was going on. That the amount of teenagers in that. We had dueling teenage groups in that one.
Exactly. So a good writer can pull this off. So there is my hesitation, but there is it's one of those things. That's why I'm keeping it temperate. Because I've seen writers do this. I've seen good writers do this. But there is always going to be that nagging in the back of my head until I physically read it. Until I actually read that first story arc. Until I read the first couple story arcs. There's always going to be that hesitation and doubt in my head.
Taking that out of it, though, I'm talking about how do you feel about them rebooting them?
Well, hey, as I said, I'm think it's going to be a cool opportunity. As I said before,
I do too.
There is this chance that I'm going to get to see these great stories that I loved all over again with a little bit of twist to it, a little bit of change to it, a little zig and zag there, and I'm looking forward to the zig and zag. I like that.
See, here's the way I'm thinking about it now, and this has really kind of put me in a very different mindset about all this. There's a continuity to all this still, and when I say continuity to all this, I mean to everything that's happened before Flashpoint. It all happened before Flashpoint. Flashpoint happened, and it changes the universe, but continuity-wise, you can actually, when did these stories happen? Because that was a question that came up multiple times at San Diego, and I started yelling at my iPod, being like, but they did happen, because if you look at Flashpoint, everything before Flashpoint happened before Flashpoint. This event that's, changing the universe is the kickoff point to what's happening after Flashpoint. So Flashpoint really is your ground zero leading into this. It connects the two versions. It makes the continuity work. So any changes that happen post are because of Flashpoint. So there actually is a continuity point to all of this. And that's really helped me to get really super excited from all this, is saying, well, wait a minute, really my continuity hasn't changed at all. It's still there. It's just it's just now this event has changed the status quo. So even Teen Titans, for example, everything for Teen Titans that I've read happened. It just Flashpoint is changing all that. I'm very anxious to read the final issue of Flashpoint to see how this all connects, because that's what's really going to be the glue that puts it all together for me, where I can sit there and say, okay, my universe actually really works because of this. And I'm very intrigued by that there is a story-driven reason to the reboot of some characters come September. So I'm excited for that. I actually was getting a little frustrated during all that because, there was one guy who got up about diversity and was sitting here saying, where's the mainstream mainstream diverse character from DC, meaning, and I get what the person was saying. They were saying, where is your Superman, Batman tiered character that's diverse? And you can't wave a magic wand and make a character a mainstream character. It doesn't work like that. It has to be something that people, why has Superman stood the test of time? Well, it's been something that since he first came onto the scenes, people have latched onto, and he's become a cultural icon. That's not to say that we can't, out of this, have a new cultural icon. Could it be Cyborg? Could it be Mr. Terrific? Could it be, I don't know. And that's up to us as readers. If we are liking a character who's diverse, and we find that there's a value and a benefit, and he's unique, and he's fresh, and it's well written, and there's something that you gravitate to, it's really up to us to be the grassroots campaign to get the word out about the truly diverse characters that we really like. They were pointing at them and saying, as a company, all they can do is put out the content and promote it, and it's up to us to then latch onto that. Like Blue Beetle, that was one that they threw back, and they said, well, Blue Beetle's been on TV, he's been on Smallville and stuff like that, and he's been on, the cartoon Batman Brave and the Bold. But Blue Beetle at this point, he has the potential to be a character that could be a breakthrough character, a breakout character. That's only going to happen, though, is, first of all, if we buy the title, and if it's good, which Tony Bedard's writing it. So, Green Lantern fans who've been enjoying his work on Green Lantern, this is a writer you already like. So if you're not a Blue Beetle fan, you never liked Blue Beetle before or anything like that, never gave it a shot, if you're liking what Tony Bedard's doing, you liked him on Rebels, you like him in Green Lantern Corps, I should say, you're going to really want to take a look at Blue Beetle and give it a shot, at least because this writer's delivered for you before. And if you like the book, don't make it up, but if you really like the book, get the word out to people that, hey, this is something you should try. It's funny how these San Diego panels have really taken somebody like me who was very nervous about this and gotten me totally, I'm on the other end now. I can't wait for September. I'm chomping at the bit. I'm throwing out a lot of devil's advocate questions, like how do you feel about the reboot of this team, like Teen Titans and stuff like that. And I'm going to do that throughout this because I think they're interesting questions that we're all asking. But I liked the responses that DC as a company was giving to the fact they were saying, hey, we were looking at our sales numbers. And the honest truth is we had books that were dropping and dropping and dropping at our high points, the times of the year when we're supposed to be doing well, holiday seasons, things like that. We were not getting the sales numbers we were in the past, and we need and want this business to be around, obviously for themselves from a business standpoint, but also for us as the readers. And, they have to think about us. So I really liked that there was which is, I think, is an honest explanation. That's the truth. We've seen the sales numbers drop for these characters. So they're saying, hey, we've got to take a look at what can we do to get the people that have lapsed, the people that have walked away, to try out these books, and hopefully to do it in a way where we keep our main core readers who've been there. Because this hobby is not, going to survive with the kind of diverse titles we have if it's just a niche group of people reading them. It's going to survive and grow and have more diverse titles if we're getting the word out that these books are good. And, for the ones that are, and supporting them. I loved, speaking of books that I love the love for, and this is a little diverting, I loved hearing Secret Six brought up at multiple panels, too.
Yes.
Being a book that people like. I'm glad to see that there is that fan base for that book, and hopefully that was noticed, and we do have the potential down the road to get, in one of the next waves of this, to get another Secret Six. It was funny. I guess I was assuming that we were going to get an immediate second wave of titles. Did you get the impression that they're really looking to support these books and then to branch out?
Yeah, they mentioned Thunder Agents were coming out in November.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that's
Nick Spencer's going to be on it too, which is cool.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that's when the next wave of titles is going to come out, or maybe it's not going to be a full-on wave. Maybe only they'll do one or two more titles, but they're definitely, they want to get these things out there, get them established, and give them some time to grow and develop an interest and possibly pull in new people. I think that the fact that they mentioned that they're not looking at crossovers, they're not looking at these big epic events. They want to focus on telling a good story within this title. And for me, that was a really good thing to hear, that, especially the energy that the creative teams are talking about when they're describing the artwork or talking about what they're doing, what they have planned, and just kind of a great collaboration going on between the creative teams with the editorial teams and just everybody involved in these projects. And that for me was something that really got me excited about it. And the fact that you can very obviously tell this has been deeply thought about. This isn't just a, well, let's just try this idea. This is something they laid the groundwork for. They laid the planning out. And the fact that this is what they're going with. They're not going to do another retcon in a year saying, let's just go back to the way it was. We're not going to get that. This is going forward how they're going to play out the DC universe. And the fact that they're having confidence in their plan, the fact they're having confidence in their creative teams really makes me feel better and makes me feel good about what's going on.
Yeah, I do too. I'm looking forward to the second wave, especially because there was Dan DiDio was committed to getting on this second wave of them, hopefully a Captain Marvel title, and he was really saying that I really want that book to be a part of the next batch of titles. So I'm excited for that. They're looking for a launch and trying to fit that character into this, and I do think it's a character that'll work in the DC universe. So,
definitely.
I give them credit though for kind of sticking to these core titles, because they really do have a diverse lineup of titles. With they're looking at their genres, and it was interesting to hear them. Did you hear the panel where they were talking about the origins of all this?
Yeah. It was a nice breakdown where and that was a great panel to listen. It was one of the 52 panels that I think it may have been the second 52 panel that's up there. Yeah. And it was just, hearing how he laid out. And that for me, the initial panel was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is a lot of good salesmanship. They're, really talking about that one. Really, you could see them laying it out. And that was just let's just open everything up to you guys, let you know where we're coming from on this. And that for me was the real piece that got me saying, okay, they know what they're doing here. I'm trusting in them. And before I was trusting in creators, now I'm trusting in the executives. Now I'm trusting in the editors. I'm trusting in the fact that they have thought about what we would think, what we would not like, what we would like, and they're going with it. And that was something for me that was this is cool.
I like that they had the discussion about that originally the original plan was not to do it with Action Comics and not to do it with Detective Comics as far as renumbering. The explanation of them coming back and saying, hey, wait a minute, if we do that, if we stick to that and we don't do it with those two titles, people are going to believe that we are just going to, in a few months, reboot this or revamp it, bring it back to our core universe. They aren't going to take us seriously. And that's the truth, actually, because I've heard how many of our listeners have said, through our discussions, that don't worry, in a year they're going to just bring it right back. And that
they ain't doing it.
No, this is them moving forward. This is their direction. This is where they're going, and it's and I liked that they were referencing that this is a huge risk that they're taking, but it's really for the purpose of delivering great stories with great characters and really just hopefully reinvigorating the line to make it appealing.
And I did like the fact that they really even multiple people asked them, is there going to be any character who will know that this is a reboot? And Booster Gold was brought up, and I think Pants actually asked the question as well. I thought it was him when I'm listening to him. That sounds like Pants. I don't know if he's at San Diego, but they asked about will there be a character who knows about the relaunch, and they all flat out said no. There's not going to be anybody in the DC universe that will know about this. And this is, boom, life. This is the way it is. So for me, that was another cool moment where I was like, okay, I like that. I like the fact that they're going all or nothing. This is it.
Booster's last issue is going to be between issue 4 and 5 of Flashpoint. And they said that will be addressed there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the Bat books real quick and kind of wrap up with those, and then we can move on to Superman, which is, I think, a heavy topic that we should discuss. And then we can kind of just talk about the DC Universe in general as we go through. But, talking about the Bat books, I really like that Paul Jenkins is being brought in on the David Finch book, The Dark Knight, because it's a title that I've, like the most recent issue, I liked it. I do think what's hurting that title for me is not that it's necessarily a bad book. It's been the delays. It's a launch title. I haven't had enough issues to really get to rally behind it. I do think the artwork's really sharp, and I'm anxious to see this title come out monthly in September. I think there's a book that will benefit from having a co-writer or a writer, on it. I don't. It sounds like they're working together on a collaborative level, but it really is. Finch is going to be focusing a lot more on the art end of it, and Paul Jenkins, certainly can deliver. I think that's going to be an interesting book.
And he threw out a teaser about steroids in the villain community. The only name that popped in my head was Bane.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if they're going to either, because I'm assuming that, the original Bane story actually happened with the breaking of the bat.
Well, dude, hang on. Can I don't mean to interrupt you for a second there. We've already seen some of this, though. Look what's been going on with Killer Croc in that book. So yeah. I think they're going to continue on with the concept that was originally developed in that Killer Croc story and now really, go somewhere with it.
Okay, yeah. Well, and that was Venom, so yeah. So I'm thinking, well, I don't know. And
I might be wrong. Let me. I should clarify that. I might be wrong, but I guess when he was saying that, I'm like, oh wow, they're gonna really take that initial, few issues. I don't know if we're gonna get another issue before the relaunch or not, but they're at least taking that storyline and now they're gonna go somewhere with it and do something with it, which I'm interested to see with that particular storyline.
It's funny. One of the characters that I was curious about. And as the more they're talking, I'm really getting into and looking forward to is Batwing. That's a guy that, when I first heard about it, I heard it was Judd doing the writing. I was like, that should be kind of interesting. And the more he was talking about it at, the one Bat panel, then another 52 panel where he was at, that's a title that I'm going, I really want to read this. I want to see where this is going. It's, I didn't know if he was going to go with a more political style or if it was going to be a hero style. And it sounds like this is going to be a really good, high action, bare knuckles, really cool villain, really cool hero book. And I'm definitely looking forward to that one.
I want that in the worst way to be an exciting book to read. I want it to be an exciting character. Just to show that different part of the world and what that character's background's like. I love that the character is not set in Gotham. I'm a huge Azrael fan, and I was so sad to see that book just didn't make it. Because I thought it was terrific, and I'm hoping Batwing, with it being in a different setting, that setting will hopefully, I don't know where it's set. I forget where it's set. It takes place in Africa, and I'm going to be excited to read the first issue to see where. But I'm hoping that having that book set in a different part of the world, with Bruce being, providing the money and occasionally some criticism and stuff like that. I'm really curious to see what that relationship's like, because they were hinting that, he is going to be obviously benefiting from the Batman Inc., being able to get the equipment and stuff like that from it. But it does sound like, Bruce is going to be one of those people who's going to come in and, tell him how to do things. But I think it's going to be a lot of what I like about Batman Beyond, where, in Batman Beyond, one of the cool things about that character is that he and Bruce work well together, but at times he has to counter Bruce. He has to go off on his own, because what works for Bruce and the way that Bruce does things works for Bruce. I mean, we've even seen that with Dick Grayson as Batman. Dick, while he has elements of him that works along the Batman thinking, he works the best as Batman when he modified that role to work for him. He's certainly been a very different Batman than Bruce is. It's one of the reasons why I'm excited now to see him go back to being Nightwing, because I think in his role as Batman, it showed how well defined he is as a character, that he wasn't overshadowed by the costume, the cape and cowl. He stayed true as a character to himself, and I think that's a strength of the writers who worked with him as well. So this Kyle Higgins book, I think, is fantastic. That Dick Grayson's going to have that role back, but I'd like to see Batwing become a book and a character like that, where he's very well defined. There's a there's a background story and a way of operating. I want to see his supporting cast. I want to see his villains. You know, that was Massacre.
Massacre.
Yeah, that
Nice
sounded really
name.
cool. Yeah. You know, that was one where the more I'm hearing about it, the more excited I'm getting. You know, it was before the thing that interested me was the location and the fact that he was in Batman Inc. and I just kind of want to know. But the more now that we're getting leaks of details, that's really, you know, going to be an interesting title. And I agree with you. Winnick writing it is definitely something that has me excited because his enthusiasm, like you could hear it at the panel, and I really dug that. Is there any other Bat book? I mean, Scott Snyder, we haven't really talked about him. He was also there, and I loved hearing him talk about Batman and where he's going with it, and his love for the artist, Greg Capullo, doing the artwork on that. It just, you know, it sounds like he's going to do another year storyline, kind of like what he did in. I'm guessing it's going to be kind of like what he did in Detective. You know, it's he seems to like working in that format, and I liked that about Detective because I thought it made Detective feel different than Batman, and Batman and Robin. And I think that's something that's really important when you're going to have multiple titles featuring the same character, that each one has its own flavor. I loved Detective Comics, and it really stood out for me because of its unique approach to storytelling.
You know, one of the things, as you're talking about Detective Comics, it's one of the thoughts that really popped in my head that made me go, wow, yeah, I never thought of that, was when Judd was talking about Catwoman. And he's, first of course, he's saying it's a dirty, dirty book. But then he also started talking about the fact that she is this thief. And when you're a thief, you got to plan it. You got to lay it out. There's going to be disguises. And he's like, he compared it to a detective story. And it's that same type of mindset that you have to lay out and you have to plan, unless, you know, if you want everything to go smoothly, it's about preparation. And that got me, of course, thinking that, yeah, would be the case. And actually, it would even add to the whole fact of why Selina and Bruce always had this kind of relationship, that they both approached their jobs the same way. They both had that same type of mindset. You know, and so as he was talking, the more I was like, yeah, this sounds cool. I want to read this book. This is another one of those books that I was gonna, I wanted to read it, but now I'm like, I want to read this. This is something that, I'm looking forward to.
Did you've never really read much solo Catwoman, have you?
Not really, no. Very little bits here, bits there. It was more of, the closest I got to was the Gotham Sirens stuff.
Right, which I thought was that felt like a solo Catwoman title. So you have in that book. For me, I've read both of her full long run solo series. The one by Jim Ballant, and then the one with Jim Ballant on art, I should say, and then he took over that book. But then Doug Munch, I think, wrote that too. I know Joe Duffy was involved as well. There's a number of people that were involved over time in that book. That was a terrific run. That's the one I've got the poster of in the where we record. And then obviously the run after that, which Ed Brubaker kicked off, and just Darwin Cook was involved. I mean, as you went on, there was just great talent on that one. Will Pfeiffer actually had a terrific run on that series. I love her as a solo character. I think she's just a terrific, well-defined female character. The fact that she's a villain with a heart, she's and that's even oversimplifying her. I guess the best way to say it, she's a very, very complex human being. And that shows just how well the character's been defined over the years, and there's a lot of opportunity to have some fun with her. And I love how Winnick made me think. You touched on it right there. Winnick is making me think of her in a new way, and yet it doesn't counter anything that I've known about her previously. I'm very excited for that title because of that. That's going to be a really fun book. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when the discussions came in as far as that they were going to give her a solo book again, and how Judd Winnick got involved and how that pitch went, because that's a book that has me very, very excited. And Gilliam March, I think, is on the art chores on that, if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure.
But that looks like a really great book. Batman and Robin is going to be another terrific book with, it's going to be the same creative team that we've had, or, the same creative team we're supposed to have right now that's going to be kicking off. But I'm glad to see that title continuing on. Yeah, like Batman. It's funny. Batman and Detective are switching writers.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the same two writers that are going to be on that book, but the Bat books are doing well.
What?
Go ahead.
When they were talking about the villains, because that was you're changing the heroes. What about changing the villains? And that was kind of a cool conversation that they had, where they're saying the villains are staying true to their core as well, but there will be some changes to it. And they talked about the Penguin limited series coming out in October. I was definitely looking forward to that one because I'm like, Penguin's always been a character that, when I read a really good Penguin story, I'm like, oh man, I wish this is the Penguin everybody knew, but most people know the Burgess Meredith or the Danny DeVito Penguin. They don't know this conniving, crime boss that, can, is a very intelligent, very nasty, dangerous villain. And I'm hoping I think we're going to see that kind of Penguin coming out of this limited series.
I liked the commitment when they talked about limited series to getting those out on time, because All-Star Robin the Boy Wonder was brought up, and that was danced around. You notice that? There was never any clarification as far as that series. But they did then talk about Widening Gyre and Odyssey, and said that those titles will be continuing and finishing up. But they've got a commitment to, with titles like that in those situations, to get them in the can first, then soliciting them. With really the purpose of, because they said what they've noticed is when these books are late, people are dropping the titles. They aren't picking them up. They're losing sales numbers. So I liked them noticing that and reacting to it and just having a new thinking towards that. And that's great. I think that's, to me, solicit it. I'll be there. And I do think you're going to get people trying out more miniseries when they know that they're going to be completed in a timely fashion. But that Penguin one's going to be the first one of this new 52, and I think that's really neat. Superman books. We got to talk about Superman.
Definitely have to talk Super.
I listened to that panel first. It was one of those ones where I wanted to know from the writers what was going on with that. And it's surprising that I listened to that first, because I usually listen to the Batman panel first. That's usually the one I go to. Then I in the past I've listened to the Batman panel. Then I go to the whole DC Universe panels, and listen to all those. Then I'll go for Green Lantern. Then I'll go Superman. This time it's the first time I've ever listened to the Superman panel first. So that says a lot about my interest in okay, what are they doing exactly? That panel was critical for me because they answered and fielded a lot of tough questions about Action and Superman and what's going on. And that Action Comics does, in fact, it's that and Justice League are the two titles that take place 5 years before. And it looks like Action is actually taking place a little bit before. Well, it is definitely taking place a little before Superman. Before Justice League, because Superman already has his outfit when he joins the Justice League. So they said this story is going to explain how he gets the suit. Ma and Pa Kent are already out of the picture in this one. We're going to see Lex Luthor, a younger Lex Luthor at this point. But Lex Luthor is almost a hero, they said in the story. So it's going to be interesting to see what turns Lex into Lex.
Well, I think it's going to be the presence of Superman. Mm-hmm. I think, the way they made it sound was Lex is, they didn't say he was this super genius. He wasn't this, multi-billionaire. They said he was more of just the kind of a go-to guy. He was. Well,
we were seeing him get the starts. Hold on, I want to clarify one thing on that, because they did mention the money, and they said you're going to see him at his starts of that money. So he is going to have money, but he isn't going to be the billionaire like we're used to now.
Right. And I think what we're going to see is Lex trying to, do what he always said, where he's like, hey, I can help society, and try to present that, and slowly this alien's going to take his thunder. And I think that's where we're going to start seeing Lex, get a little bit more desperate, or Lex get a little bit angry, and Lex is basically attacking this alien that everybody else is supporting. I think we're going to see a classic traditional Lex that we're used to, but again, it's going to be something that's going to grow and develop. It's not going to be thrusted right in the middle of it. We're going to see that kind of, I'm betting we'll even see probably moments where these two aren't at odds with each other, that they're actually like, hey, and then we'll see the turn of just that just that Lex, his one character flaw is the fact that he can't recognize that Superman is there to help. And I think that's where we're going to see the turn, and which to me always makes an interesting Lex Luthor story, where you're like, Lex, you just want to yell into the comic saying, dude, just look at this, you two working together, and you could solve all the world's problems. And he just has that one character flaw of his that he can't accept it. And so that's something I'm really excited seeing that growth and that development.
Now, see, from the solicits and everything that I'm reading, with this being a world without superheroes, he's going to be the first. It sounded like people aren't going to be super trusting of aliens at first. So it sounds like he is not going to all of a sudden, bam, be out there and everyone's going to be supporting him. It's going to be the opposite. I think he's going to have to earn trust.
Well, you think about it. If 5 years before, so in 2006, somebody showed up on the scene that could fly or could lift the car over their head and said, hey, I'm here to help you guys, what would be America's first reaction? First reaction would be, okay, study him, dissect him. We can't trust him. Hey, how do we stop him just in case he becomes he doesn't decide to help and he decides to steal from us? Or people will be saying, hey, what's his end game? Yeah, he's saying he wants to help. Is he going to charge us for these services? Is he going to do this? Is this just get us overconfident and then hit us with the 1-2 punch? Is this a rope-a-dope thing? And I think that kind of is the ideology they're going with. That you look at present society, how we would deal with this. Because I really think that if Superman showed up today, we wouldn't trust him. Just because we always think somebody's got, some ulterior motive behind their generosity.
Yeah, that is one of the funny things. And I like how you were explaining that because, it would be more than one thing. It wouldn't be just you'd be afraid that he's going to throw a Buick at you or something like that. It really would be, nowadays there's a lot of reasons to be suspect of somebody's public persona versus their private persona versus the one they put on even for television or news or things like that. We're very used to an era where people put on, kind of clean themselves up and have an image for the public eye. But we're finding out quickly there's a lot of people who don't usually measure up to the image that they show us. If that makes sense. And then there's some, nice quiet people who measure up far beyond those people. So, we have a lot of reason to not always take people at face value for how we see them. And I think in the day and age of the internet, that's made it even more prevalent where there are people who hide behind an internet persona. And, I think that's an interesting exploration. I'm going to be curious to see how they do that and how Superman wins over the trust of people. And what keeps him going when people don't necessarily trust him. Because that, I think, is always motivational to see somebody have this way to keep going.
Yeah, and that's something I thought was going to be very interesting in the early years. Because, they were talking about just how he doesn't have this support structure. Yeah, he's got his buddy, Clark has this one friend in Jimmy Olsen. They're both geeks. They both kind of have some similar, hobbies and whatnot. But in reality, he doesn't have that Ma and Pa Kent that he can go to. He doesn't have Lois. He doesn't have all these people, holding theirs, saying, "Yay, it's Superman." So you're talking about just what keeps him going. That's the story I'm really curious about. And I think we're going to get that because we're going to get the exploration of where he comes to present day.
Supergirl was the one that I was worried about because of how much I really loved the work of Sterling Gates and Jamal Igle. That was one where the panel won me over because even though it is a reboot, it sounds like there's going to be some intriguing twists and turns there where, she's put in a situation where she's dropped into this place where, and I'm guessing that's Earth, and because she's dropped here, she doesn't know why she's here, doesn't necessarily trust that Clark is who he says he is, meaning that he's actually from Krypton like she is. So we were going to have a very different take on her in that sense, because we were used to before with what happened in like Superman Batman that, they within a very short stretch of time, had a trust between them. So I'm curious to see how long that takes and what that whole route looks like with her. But I also liked that there was a clarification that this book isn't going to be all gloom and doom for her, even though there's going to be some darkness to it. She does have a well-rounded personality, and she does have a sense of humor, and she is like this sweet girl in behind all that as well. And that's important for me because I don't want to see her become unlikable again. And I liked that story when it played out originally in Superman Batman. That was terrific. I liked how that worked, and there was that gradual growth over time. But I don't want to do that again. To me, the point of this, if they're de-aging characters and telling stories again, is to approach a character in a new way. To stay true to the core who the character is, but change circumstances. Because, Supergirl had two very different origins, in the sense that two different approaches to her. She started off as an always likable character, in the way back when, pre-Silver Age. Then all of a sudden turned into, was revamped and turned into that character who became very hard to like because of how bratty she was. So I'm going to be curious to see what this takes like for her. And, how do we get to the character that... Sterling Gates and Jamal Ligo clearly loved the original Supergirl, and they evolved gradually, along with the writers who wrote her before, her into this character. So I've got a lot of hope for that series now.
The question that I wish someone would have asked, and no one did, was New Krypton. Did that story arc happen? Because that was a huge moment, for Supergirl, and the fact that her father, and mother both died, and just everything that happened throughout that. That's the Superman story. I wanted to know if that's still in canon, if that's still around, because you can, yes, they said Doomsday's there. Yes, he still died. The characters who came out of Doomsday are still around. They mentioned Steel is going to be very prevalent in Action Comics, so there's going to be, these characters are going to be around. But for me, New Krypton is a huge story that, present day Superman, that I'm wondering if that story is still going to be around.
Here's the thing, though: Death of Superman happened, but he wasn't married to Lois.
Right.
So. That's where these stories get interesting now. There are things that have happened in the past that are still canon, but they are slightly changed because of the fact that, characters who were married weren't married. Maybe characters who were at a certain status quo don't have that status quo anymore. And I'm interested in that. I think that's kind of interesting, and I want to know how that all gradually. I want to know what was different because of those little tweaks and things like that. So I kind of like that. I am curious with her to know, did New Krypton happen to her or not? And I think we're going to get, it sounds like we're going to get some clarification with her, what is and what isn't. Because it sounds like there's going to be a mystery with her in the beginning, and we will gradually find out what her deal is. And I don't know that it's going to be that simple and cut and dry. Superboy, I was glad to hear that he is Connor. Yeah.
And, I'm curious to see what happens with him, because they talked about how he was being dissected, and there's this whole, robotic, but he's not a robot, and it's just, they try to make sound like someone was trying to make a clone of him, and then everything just goes really horribly wrong because of the tactile telekinetics, and I want to see that story, see how that played out, and just get a connection from the death of Superman, Superboy, that was, the jackets and the glasses and the attitude, to what we have currently, and seeing how this process changed him, but still kept him the same.
Well, did you hear Scott Lobdell say that Superboy is the villain of Teen Titans the first year?
Yeah, that was another thing. I was like, what are we talking about here?
And is that a swerve where, throughout Superboy's storytelling, we're going to learn that, does that have something to do with the cloning? I don't know. I'm very curious to see what that actually really means.
It could very easily be the whole misunderstanding between superheroes. It could be a clone version of him. It could be a mind control version of him, because we've seen Connor, take a trip on the dark side. So maybe because of the process, things are a little wonky inside his head, and that's what the Teen Titans have to stop. I don't know.
One of the things I really like when Grant Morrison talks about characters that he's using, such as Steel and things like that, because people were asking, why doesn't Steel have his own book? Such a terrific character and things like that. And I love the way that Grant talks about characters that, he tries to put those concepts out there, tries to revamp them in a way to make them fresh and interesting, and hopes not necessarily that he's going to do it, but that somebody else will then take that ball and go with it. And I think there's a lot of creators who create characters like that, and it's got to be rewarding. I think there's some characters who obviously you probably beat your head against the wall with how somebody else uses them, but there's also got to be something rewarding when somebody uses a character that you revamped, reworked, or even created from the ground up, and then they get it right. And then that character kind of takes on a life of their own and goes beyond maybe what you expected for them. So I'm hoping, Steel obviously has a rich, rich history. And I'm hoping that is a character who I would follow. Would you follow Steelbook?
Oh, in a heartbeat. Because, he is just a great character. And he was one of the ones from that whole Death of Superman that I always liked. And I wanted to see more of him. And just, definitely a character I would go with.
Did you read any of his solo? I don't know how much you read back then. Did you read any of his solo series, or did you just read him in Death of Superman?
No, I read the solo. I picked up some of that solo stuff.
Yeah, because I liked him as a solo character, and that was one that I was sad to see when it left. So I would be up for a new Steel series, especially nowadays. I think he's a character that really works. Justice League. I think we need to talk a little bit about Justice League. That is the launch title. Mm-hmm. Come at the end of August, that is going to be the first title. And, I gotta tell you, it sounds like the ending of Flashpoint is going to have a direct effect, not just on changing the universe, but in perhaps setting up the situation that forces this Justice League to get together. I have to question if maybe, what if hypothetically, Barry and his band of misfits aren't able to resolve Flashpoint? What if it really does need the Justice League to resolve it?
I don't know.
And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm getting this weird feeling like those two books are going to somehow be tied together.
Well, I was actually thinking that, and I'm pretty sure it's not like an original thought. I thought the Flashpoint, what Barry's able to correct, turns into this new universe.
Oh, wait, hold on. I totally agree. I totally agree with that.
But I think it's going to be over and done with. I don't think the new Justice League is going to have to solve the problem.
I guess I'm just wondering if, maybe to correct myself, I'm wondering if what they do creates the problem that causes the Justice League to form.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. Kind of the ripple effect, or it could be. That could definitely, the end product of Flashpoint could cause the big event that brings the heroes together.
Because they're putting back together a universe with huge changes. So I guess what I'm saying is, what don't we know? I think that issue 5 of Flashpoint is going to be pretty critical. And I should also clarify that I do think Justice League #1 is going to be set up in such a way that you should be able to launch right from the get-go into that series without having read Flashpoint. I'm sure they're going to craft all those #1s with that idea in mind. But that doesn't mean that there isn't some elements of Flashpoint that could cause what's happening in Justice League. I don't know. I'm very curious to see what that's going to be like. I'm excited for Justice League, especially when I heard that one of my favorites is going to eventually be on the team, because they threw out a Hawkman reference where he walks in and he's slapping down the bloody mace and says, don't worry, it's not my blood, all that stuff. And, I like that they're going to be having fun with these characters and bringing, more than just the team that we saw on that initial cover into this book. You and I talked about this beforehand, how they were talking about a little guy who was going to add some of the diversity to the team, and we were both wondering if that was in fact going to be Ryan Choi.
It's funny when they threw out the teaser, and they're saying, because they're talking about diversity, and they're talking about, there's going to be a little guy in the Justice League, and at first it did, and then when they started throwing out that the name rhymes with, and I'm like, Adam, diverse Adam. And I literally out loud while sitting at my desk, because I had this, recorded on a little MP3 player, and I was listening to this at work. I threw up both of my arms. I was like, yes, Ryan's back. Then I realized I'm at work and I'm talking out loud. People next to me look at me and they're like, Jim, who's Ryan? Like, that's Ryan Choi, the new Adam. Okay, I'll be quiet again.
But I would love that. I mean, I love the idea that this Justice League team is going to have, a larger cast. Because what did they say, 14, 15 members?
Yeah, and they say it sounds like it's going to be a nice rotation, people coming in, people going out as they're needed and whatnot. So that's going to be a neat usage of it. I'm glad to see that there's not a set locked in stone, and I'm kind of curious to see, especially the greens, with the lanterns, seeing how that plays out.
Well, because it's interesting with I guess we should probably actually let me pause this here and we'll start a second segment.
Okay.
Hope this craft can withstand this powerful force.
Hey, Shauna and Jim, it's Mark, the Zebra Blur from the Comic Forums. I had a quick question in regards to the new 52 comics that are coming out. You've talked about how, I guess you've been to relaunches of comics before, back in the 1980s, and I was wondering your opinion on how the new technologies, the internet, social media sites, Twitter, things like that, have affected the way people have taken and processed the information, and if you think it's had a positive or a negative effect on leading up to the relaunch. So that was one thing I was wondering. Besides that, I've been really enjoying Flashpoint and the Wonder Woman and Aquaman. The only thing I would have to say about it is sometimes they seem a little too short. I would like more of a story than, especially on the Emperor Aquaman and Wonder Woman titles, but they can actually fit into 3 issues of each. But I guess that's a good thing, because if they leave you wanting more story, you're enjoying it. Besides that, I did have 2 more things. One, just on the discussion a couple of shows ago on diversity, I think it's a little unfair to claim that, like, the Justice League is not diverse just because they all may be the same color, or they have a lot of white men on it, because then you're saying that Superman, Aquaman, Batman are basically all the same when they really aren't. I mean, they're a very diverse group just because of who they are. So, I mean, overall, I think the DC universe is a very diverse place. So that's just my opinion. And finally, what was the other thing? Oh, I've noticed I've been reading more, I guess, monthlies instead of trades lately. And one thing that took me a while to get used to was the advertisements in the comics, especially these mini comics they put in there, like the Subway ones lately. And I sort of really enjoy the trades that it doesn't have those advertisements. I don't mind them in the monthlies, but sometimes it'll throw off the reading when it's right in the middle of the comic like that. And just an observation. But that's all I have. Thanks for the shows. Very entertaining. Hope Jim got back safely from Italy. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
I'm going to start with diversity and work my way backwards. That's such a tricky subject. First of all, you're right. The DC Universe is a very diverse place in that all the characters you mentioned in the Justice League are very different and unique characters. The issue, though, and where people are feeling like there isn't enough diversity, and I think this is throughout comics, I think what people want is characters of mixed backgrounds, from various countries and from various religions and from various, male characters, female characters, characters of different colors. I mean, it's like the real world. And, it's a tricky balance because let's just take white characters just for an example. there's a lot of great characters. Like, let's take a look at Aquaman. Aquaman's going to be relaunched, and Hawkman's going to be relaunched. Those are two white characters. And the problem with those characters I've always faced is not that they haven't had critically acclaimed titles. Aquaman's run with Peter David was very critically acclaimed when it was out there. But he's one of those characters that he lasts a certain amount of time, and then it seems to kind of peter out, and people lose interest, and they walk away from the character. I think this is a problem that happens a lot of times with characters that are created that are a little more diverse. It's, unless they're the top tier, like Superman, Batman, and really in Green Lantern right now, it seems like the other characters are having trouble. And I think this is what they're trying to do with their initiative right now with relaunching the line. Like, let's give an opportunity for some of these other characters to be a part of that equal spotlight, get people to jump on board. And actually, this will tie into some of your social media stuff and things like that. With a lot of these diverse characters that are launching, what people need to do is, if you're liking a book and loving a book, and I know I've talked about this before on the show many times, if it's a diverse character that you're like, ooh, this is a character that stands the potential to have a low run, where not enough people are picking it up, things like that. That's when you want to be doing blogging and Facebook and Google Plus and Twitter and all that, letting people know it's a great book and why. Go to forums. A lot of these forums that, people avoid because of the negativity. Go in there, throw up a quick message talking about why the book's great. Don't worry about how people respond. If they don't, if they're going to, start jumping on you and that type of stuff, just walk away from the thread and just post it and, do a hit and run, but do a positive hit and run. A lot of times, all the hit and running I'm seeing is negative. So let's do some positive hit and running on some of these books that are working. And that's how to get some of these diverse characters, no matter what their background is, whether they're white, any background with these characters, to get them out there and around. But I think that's the issue is, there's people are looking for characters that they can relate to directly, and, when you have an all-white team, and it's a predominantly male team, there's going to be, people are going to say, hey, I want to connect with this group, but, there's not enough representation there for me and for my background. So I see that side of it too. I agree with you, those characters are diverse. I don't think, and that's not the point, I don't think people are saying that those characters aren't diverse. They want to see more diversity that they can relate to. That's really what the issue is. And, it's, you have to look back to how long some of these characters have been around and out, and how the world has changed since then, and how media has changed since then. And that's really, comics are right now trying to, and I think that's part of this relaunch, is they're trying to have the DC Universe match a little bit more of the real world. I do encourage, for anybody interested in diversity right now, listen to some of the panels, because a lot of these questions were asked at the panels, and there were some great answers, I thought, from creators who are talking about things that they're trying to do to get that diversity in their comics, and a lot of the positives there. So it's an interesting discussion point for me, and it's one of the reasons why I had Mike on. It's one of the reasons why I've been talking about it on the show, because I think that there's a lot of different viewpoints on this. Like, I think your viewpoint right now is completely valid, because that viewpoint matches you and your needs in the comics. But it doesn't necessarily match the needs of every reader. And I think that's one of the great things about this medium, is we all can have a different experience and a different viewpoint about these comics and the characters that are in them. So I don't think that there's one set way to look at the issue of diversity. I think that there's multiple ways to look at that as well. You're very satisfied with the diversity of the characters, and that's great. That works for you. I kind of see all sides of it on this one, and it's kind of an interesting and fun topic because of that. And I think it is something that we all can respect each other on. You were talking about those Flashpoint minis and the 3 issues. It's funny. I've been saying ever since this event started how I just want more and more and more, and that's a sign of a good story. And at the end, I'm still going to want to know more about this universe and more of what was going on there. The God of War one is a great example of one where I would have loved to have seen how he took over. And it just, there's not enough time, in this event for that to happen. That was billed as a one-shot, but that's one in particular that I'm thinking of that I would have liked to have seen how all that went down. There's a lot of what's going on with the Amazons that we're not going to be able to see every little detail of that I'd like to see in Aquaman as well and Superman. But, what they're delivering is really fantastic, and I'm having a lot of fun with the event right now, same as you are. I agree with you. The three issues, I'm like, ooh, they're trying to doing a lot in these three issues, and they're delivering. But, I'm with you. I'd like to see more, and that's not a knock on anybody that's creating. It's a compliment that they're hooking me in. The last thing we want to be saying is it over yet? When you start saying that, that's a sign that it's not meeting your needs. It's not, hitting you the way that you want it to. So I'm glad that it's hitting you in a similar fashion that it is for me. When the relaunch thing, Jim actually has never been through a relaunch. He's been through a book relaunching, but he's never been through like what happened in '86, where we saw quite a bit of the line relaunched. And, has the internet made it better or worse? A little bit of A, a little bit of B. I will say it's provided a great opportunity to get the word out about it. I think not just the internet, newspapers are covering a lot of this too. So I think it's really terrific that social media is just getting the word out and getting some excitement. Where is it a positive or a negative? We won't know that until we see the sales numbers, to be 100% honest with you. Because to me, it's a positive if all of this, whether positive, negative, whatever people are gabbing about, if it's generated enough buzz that people give it a shot and then stick with some of these books. People who who are lapsed readers, which is really what they're going after, lapsed readers. They're looking to hopefully captivate those of us that have been around and maybe get us to try out some new titles that we haven't before. But really, those lapsed readers to bring them in. If that's successful and they start noticing a positive benefit to this where you're getting more readers than you had previously, then it was a positive. If they lose readers from it, and it's a negative. So that's the real honest answer of it. For me as a fan, I think sometimes we all get nervous and we share that and we kind of feed off each other, if that makes sense. So if you get nervous about something, then somebody else gets on, I am dropping everything now. I'm not going to read DC anymore because they're doing this. That usually breeds other people who start feeling that same way. Now, some of that is like, an extreme reaction to the unknown, and a lot of that's blowing hot air. We all do that. And I mean, that's not an insult to anybody. We all do that. You have this first initial gut reaction where you're panicking and freaking out and upset, and, that's what leads to things like that. But I don't know. I don't think it's a negative. I think there's been a lot of buzz that's been generated. I think there's been a lot of negative buzz, and that really bothers me. I think there's a lot of ignorant negative buzz. And when I say ignorant negative buzz, it's if you hear something and you listen, like, for example, let's talk about you and I listened to the same panel from San Diego. You didn't like the panel, I did. Or let's flip it the other way around. You loved the panel and I didn't like it. Let's go that route, just for an example. Okay? If I go on a website and post a lengthy discussion as far as what I didn't like and things like that, there's a point-counterpoint ability there, where people can start having a discussion with you. On the other hand, if you listen to that panel and love it, I listen to a couple of comments you make about the panel, and then I start trashing what the company's doing because of it. I haven't really given it enough listen. I haven't really heard like the whole panel. I haven't really seen the whole layout, especially if I'm not reading the titles and things like that. There are those people right now who aren't reading the comics. They'll read a blurb in previews. They'll read a little article on the internet or something like that. They're not actually reading the comics, and they're very negative about the comics and what the company's doing and things like that. I have a huge problem with that. That's the part that I think there's something really wrong with right now. It's those people who are ignorant. I don't care if you don't. There's been a lot of people who I've had what I think have been, and I hope the people agree, wonderful debates where we've been on opposite sides of a debate on the comics. But the one thing that I respect about the people that, and this is really a shout out to the people on Facebook and on the forum and things like that, over the years we've been doing this podcast, I've had debates with. The one thing I've always enjoyed about those debates are I'm talking to real readers who have intelligent discussion points, and hopefully they felt that, even if we get a little feisty with each other, that there was some value to the discussion that we had, that it was worthwhile for us to lock horns and do all that. And I genuinely enjoy that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, sometimes, when you have those discussions and, even if you don't wind up on the same page at the end, you just agree to disagree, that was of positive value to social media, if I'm making sense. So I do think there is some, because there's a buzz there, two people debating over what DC's doing in September, with intelligent discussion point where both of them actually know what they're talking about. I think that can be good. I think that can get people excited and want to check things out to see if A or B is correct, if I'm making sense there. So I don't know yet. I really don't know if this is going to be positive or negative to it. I'm hoping it generates sales numbers. And honestly, I'm hoping it generates sales numbers for comics in general. I think the whole medium is really something that needs benefits from any buzz from any of the companies, whether it's Marvel, whether it's DC, whatever. There needs to be that, and I think anything on the internet that's getting people excited is a good thing. So this one, I don't know. My big problem is I'm seeing a lot of negativity out there. That's extreme. And none of us know what this is going to look like in September till we actually read the product. Now we have some preview pages, which is great, from that 52. I know that they published that on the DC app, that 52 preview book that they released at the con. We actually have some pages of the Justice League, so people can kind of take a look at that and see some of the directions that they're going in. So we'll see. I don't know. It's a very good phone call. I could literally go on for hours on this. I often do on the show. But, relaunches, this is very different than the relaunch. Well, no, it's not. Let me explain the difference. We have the social media and all that now. Back when I was younger and in 86, there were more readers. So there was more opportunity. I had more friends of mine that were reading Man of Steel, that were reading George Perez's run with Wonder Woman. So I was having different sorts of discussions with those people. Green Arrow, launched after Longbow Hunters and all that into his own solo series. So, there were these exciting things going on at the time with and then Dark Knight Returns and all that stuff came on. There was just a lot more readers and a lot more people who were willing to read that, if that makes sense. So I'm hoping this event starts bringing some of those people back and some new readers, maybe who never touched a comic before because of it. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, if it's good or bad. So sorry, kind of a lengthy answer, but I think it's a complicated question that you're asking, and it's a good one. It's a really good. Actually, the whole phone call was really good. From diversity straight on through. I think we're in a potentially really exciting time for all of those topics, for diversity in comics. And I think, we have the potential to be on some cutting edge material there that, if people start rallying behind these books, we could see some characters coming into the spotlight that can really show some positive benefits for diversity in comics. As long as, to me, it's all about well-written, well-produced characters that people can rally behind and get charged behind. And if we do that, then we can get some, new diverse characters in there. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see how this all goes. I'm excited and intrigued by all this. Honestly, it's funny. I went from being a nervous Nelly about this whole September thing to really getting excited. And as Jim and I mentioned on this show, it really was. These panels at San Diego, I thought, were extremely well put together, and they didn't dodge any questions. They really, whether you like the answers or not, they at least addressed them. And for me, it was a very big positive.
Hey, Sean and Jim, this is Greg Shanky, longtime listener, intermediate correspondent, and first-time caller. I was making up my list for the September DCs in the DCBS, and I was just thinking, I wonder what this new digital route is going to do when they make decisions about cancellation. And we all know there are going to be comics that get canceled. I mean, you look at that list, we don't want to admit it, but there are things there we know in our hearts aren't going to last. But I'm wondering now what is going to be the cutoff point. I mean, it used to be when DC was just a print company, there was a cutoff number, that you either made a number and you get going, or you put below that number and you were canceled. But now, is the cancellation going to be a conglomerate between digital and print sales? Is it going to be, a conglomeration of the digital over a few months? Is it going to be like how some television shows don't get canceled because they have a high number of online viewers? Like Chuck was saved a few times because the people were watching it online. So if, say, sales were, better than expected on digital, would that keep a lower selling print comic book going? And might they cancel the print version and just keep the digital version? Just something I was thinking about, and if you have any comments you might want to add, that'd be great to hear. Thanks, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It's funny, a lot of this plays into the whole diversity question. With digital being a part of that, if that's part of the sales numbers, and see, this is we're into a new ground here. And if we get a new audience, not just from digital and paper, from this relaunch, we might see some characters breaking out from that. And, will digital numbers play into that? I'm sure they're watching that very closely, Greg. And, I think that's going to be very interesting to see, because I think they want to see, does day and date digital matter or not? I think they're going to be watching, first of all, number one, are people buying day and date digital, or are they going to wait 30 days for the $1.99 price on the digital? Because there's a couple options there, because after 30 days, each of these titles drops down to $1.99, so I think there's going to be an audience that does that. So I think they have to watch who's buying day and date, who's buying at $1.99, what is the price point for digital, and this is new ground for them, so I think they're going to be watching that very closely. I do think, see, a lot of this, I've been listening to all the panels from San Diego, and that number question came up, and it was something where I actually really liked their answer, because it sounds like they're really trying to give these books a shot and a chance to get some legs. They're launching these 52 titles. They're going to do some promotional things behind them, trying to really get these titles into people's hands, get people excited about them. So I'm hoping that they're giving these titles some chance to develop an audience base and some time to do that. It sounds like there's not a clear cutoff on those titles yet. I mean, obviously, we all know that if they're tanking to a certain point in time, when I say they, I mean one or two titles or whatever, however many, they'll be on the cancellation block and they'll relaunch something else. They'll go for a new title. I don't know on this one. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of formula they're looking at, in combination. But I think it'd be crazy not to assume that digital is going to have some impact here today on this one, because I think they're going to be watching that extremely closely. So the short answer is yes, digital I think is going to have an impact if the sales numbers are there. So that's going to be the key. I think what's going to be interesting to see is, are there going to be some titles that have legs as a digital title but maybe never worked as a paper? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think it's a wait and see. And there's a possibility this whole digital thing could wind up being a very big positive, or it could wind up doing nothing. I don't know. I'm hoping it does. I think that's kind of cool. The potential for that to be a new audience. And there's a number of titles there that are interesting ones to launch out, and they do have a potential to have a new audience. But anyway, Greg, thanks for calling, and it was great to see you in Chicago, buddy. I really enjoyed hanging out with you. So please feel free to call again. I love hearing your commentary on comics. actually want to give a quick shout out to Rick's Comics, which is part of the Book Cave family, along with Future for Color, actually. I had an opportunity to be on both of those podcasts. And I actually put a link in the show notes to the Book Cave and Future for Color and that whole family of podcasts. Had a great time up there with Rick and Bruce Rosenberger, and it was great to chat with those guys about previews and also to talk about comic books in media. We talked about television and film and just kind of our history with cartoons and animation and everything. It was a lot of fun, kind of looking out at some of our favorite characters. We actually honestly could have gone on. We can probably follow up on it in the future and continue discussing it. But it was a great episode, and I really want to thank Rick for inviting me. I had a great time.
Reaching melting point. Not sure we can make it.
Okay, Jim, there's a method to my madness. I wanted to start a second segment because I don't know how we can talk about Hal Jordan and not talk about the ending of War of the Green Lanterns, because a lot of the question marks come up there. So if you haven't read the end of War of the Green Lanterns, wait to listen to this next bit until you've read the end of that. If you don't read Green Lantern, and obviously that's going to be something where it's not going to matter to you, but for those of you that have, some of you, if you've already listened to the San Diego panels, have already had this spoiled for you. Okay, Jim, let's go into it. Hal's not Green Lantern.
Yeah.
And I didn't see that coming. We were so worried about who is going to lose the ring. We didn't consider the possibility that somebody else might get it. First of all, I didn't see it being Hal that was losing the ring. If I had any idea in my mind that Sinestro was going to get it, then I guess I would have thrown out Hal as a possibility. I did not see that coming, and I loved it.
Oh my God! And I remember every time that you and I, or I heard, or we discussed it with other people, we always threw out, "Oh, it can't be Hal. It's got to be Kyle, or could it be, Guy? Could it?" And everyone names kept throwing around, but everyone kept saying, "No, it can't be Hal." And sure enough, that's who loses his ring. And if they had just done that, that would have been an "oh my God" moment. But to put it back on Sinestro's hand and actually have him be part of the Green Lantern Corps again, that for me was just my jaw hit the ground. And then as they're talking about it, Jeff Johns is talking about it, he's saying Sinestro doesn't want the ring. He doesn't want to be part of that. He wants the ring off, and he can't get it off. And just this concept of the fact that the other Green Lanterns don't want him there. He doesn't want to be there, and what's going to happen to Hal. It's just that whole thing really had me going, wow. This is cool.
And Jeff confirmed that he has to fight Sinestro has to fight the Sinestro Corps, the group that he built. I mean, that's terrific.
And the funny that comment got me thinking, like how they can't force Sinestro to fight the Sinestro Corps. He could actually lash out against the Green Lantern Corps with a green ring. Green can kill green. So he could actually, I don't see, that's the story I want to see. How is he forced to fight the Sinestro Corps unless the Sinestro Corps doesn't trust him anymore because he's got green? That's the only way I can see that happening, because you think about it, the Sinestro Corps is not exactly the most trusting and understanding group, so they see Sinestro with a green, they may think, hey, he double-crossed us. And so then they're throwing down with Sinestro, not listening to him. That's that's the only way I could see that he's forced to fight him, because they're going to kill him. So he's like, fine, now then I will kill you.
Well, here's the one thing, too. Post the War of the Green Lanterns, what restrictions, if any, have the Guardians put on the rings? Are the same rules in place? They could very well be,
right?
But what if they aren't? I'm the whole storyline just has me excited. Whatever they decide to do with it, I think that's really cool. But the reason why we went on this tangent, you have to then look at Justice League and say, okay, 5 years earlier, Hal was a founding member of the Justice League. When they shift in the next story arc to present day, what does that mean?
Who's going to be wearing the ring? And that's the thing I want to know. They could very easily have one of the other Earth-based Green Lanterns wearing the ring. Maybe Sinestro. I can't see Sinestro working with the JLA. I just can't see him doing that. But then again, I couldn't see him with a Green Lantern ring again. So who knows where the story's going to go?
Unless he tries to do it better than Hal.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. As soon as I said I can't see it, you threw out a possibility where I could see Sinestro doing that. Just to prove that he is better than Jordan. So yeah,
and them trying to keep an eye on
yeah.
Sinestro. I don't know. I mean, you've got perfectly good Green Lanterns to put on that team from the rest of the batch too. So I don't know. I'm very curious to see what that means and what that history is like. I liked when they were talking about Justice League and JLI, the fact that they're two very different teams. You've got one that's United Nations sanctioned that nobody has a mask on, with the exception of Batman, who
is not there. They don't want him there.
Right.
Well, the United Nations doesn't want him there, and he doesn't care what they want. He's going to do what he wants because he's Batman. I thought that was a cool distinction of why Batman's on both JLA and JLI.
But then it's also, you've got team members of the Justice League thinking one thing, and then JLI thinking another thing as far as which team's the better team to be on because of perks and benefits and things like that to being on the team. I like the idea that JLI has a kind of revolving door when it comes to what the roster is, and I'll be curious to see what leads to that. I'm curious to see with Booster Gold, because now I'm going to be under the impression that this isn't necessarily the full Booster, with everything that he's gone through before. Something's going to change about him in Flashpoint. So what is Booster going to be like in this has me interested now.
Yeah, they said the thing with Booster would be addressed in the final issue of his.
Right.
So that's the thing, because they flat out asked, are we going to see the time-traveling Booster? And they said no. So, not immediately. So who knows? I'm thinking we're going to go back to the younger Booster who wasn't the greatest hero you never knew about. And on one hand, I'm glad to see that because that Booster, I can understand de-aging him along with everybody else. But on the other hand, I really did like the hero that nobody knows about. And part of me wishes that it's a complete swerve, that Booster knows, and Booster is just going back to and playing the old game he did because he knows he has to do it, and that's going back to that great cover story of his.
I don't think it's going to be a swerve, though, because their rationalization for not having anyone know kind of fits, because they're trying not to leave a backdoor character.
Yeah, and
I mean, I like that. So I honestly don't think that's going to be a swerve. I think that's going to be legit.
Yeah, and to be honest, I understand and I like that, but there's always just that in the back of my head. I'm always looking for the swerve. I'm always looking for the little, the 1-2 punch that you don't see coming. And I don't know. Part of me would like it, part of me wouldn't. Part of me hopes that Rip Hunter doesn't go away, but it's kind of hard not to have. If Booster isn't Booster, or if Booster goes back to the way he was, can you really have Rip Hunter around again? Or is that just an indication on what Booster will eventually become? I don't know. There's so many different little questions and little nuances of the character that I'm curious about.
Justice League Dark was something. Did you get to hear any of the commentary on that one?
Yeah.
That sounds really good to me. I like the idea of this team that is brought together, but they don't necessarily like each other. They're basically a lot of your Magic characters that are brought together to fight, the types of villains that really your regular Justice League would not normally face. But I like the idea of that inner turmoil of people who, maybe this one might have trouble controlling their powers. This one might be, fully in control of their powers but needs the other people in order to, hold it together or something like that. There's all kinds of different options, but I like the idea of this team kind of fighting in the dark underbelly of the DC universe. The kind of creatures and things. Maybe we would have gotten a Zatanna book or something. I like that element of more of the horror, darker element of the DC universe, which I think can ultimately play then into other titles, because you're developing it here. And I think that's really important to develop, new areas to explore in the DC universe and to leave those toys out for other people to play with as well, adding to the playground. The Cornell book that I was particularly interested in was the Demon Knights
Yes.
Completely set in medieval times. But actually, before I say one more thing about Demon Knights, let me hang on. We also, in that Justice League Dark, is it Lady Godiva from Flashpoint that is going to be appearing in that book as well, which that was one I'm like, yes, I'm glad to see that character is going to be in there. But jumping back to Demon Knights, I love this idea of Demon Knights set in medieval times. I think that it is a time that I love historical pieces in general, and it's an era. We both love Jonah Hex. You became a fan of Jonah Hex, and I'm really excited for All Star Western because of the same reasons that I've been liking Jonah Hex. This one I like for the same reason. It's set in a different period, and he's going to have complete freedom to flesh out and develop that whole era and add a backstory and a history to the DC universe that really hasn't been explored in this kind of depth, and I'm excited for that book.
One of the things that got me, and as well, there's a bunch of things that got me, but with the Demon Knights, I was curious about the title, but I wasn't really too excited about it. But just hearing him talk about the title, what it's going to be about, where it's coming from, and that got me excited about it. Just hearing his energy and just hearing his passion about it. And I enjoy the medieval stuff. I enjoy the end of Camelot kind of stories. And for a while, I thought it was just going to be more about, Etrigan, who I'm like, okay, can be interesting, but it's not just the one character, it's the whole cast of characters, and that was something that really got me going, yeah, I want to see this. And same thing with the Justice League Dark. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, magic book. I kind of liked the Shadow Pact. I like Zatanna, so maybe I'll get into that. But hearing them describe just how it's a different type of team. It's this different team dynamic where the team doesn't trust each other. Some of them are together because they don't like the others, and they think the other one maybe is going to do more harm than good. So that's why they're on the team. And it just, again, it's a different type of team dynamics. And I like the fact that they're throwing out these different variations out there for people. Someone in one of the 52 panels, I think it was, asked a question saying, he's the comic book reader, but when his friends come to him asking him about these 52 titles, what title would you put, what title should I give them to read? And DiDio had this great comments like, find out what they're into. We're creating this wide diversity so that it will please, everybody. There will be something for everybody. Find out what they're into and put that book in their hand. And I thought that was a great answer and a great reason why we're getting such a wide diversity and different types of characters getting thrown at us in these 52 titles. This is really a way to introduce or bring people back into comics who maybe stepped away. And that general concept, that idea behind why this is happening really just kind of got me jacked up and got me more excited the more people were talking, the more they were saying.
One of the questions that somebody asked, and I want to make sure I mention this one because I thought it was interesting. It wasn't a question, it was more a comment. One of the guys got up and thanked them for the digital, and he said not for him because he's the traditional comic fan. He goes to the comic shops, and that's not going to change for him. But he said that he has a group of friends who are going to be buying them day and date digital because they're interested in the characters and they're interested in comics, but the comic shop stigma it's not for them. They don't want to, they're for lack of a better term, they don't want to go into a comic shop. They kind of, but they're into the whole digital age and that whole revolution. So he said thank you because it's going to offer him an opportunity to be able to talk with them about books and things like that. I think we've been all along talking about, and it's been one of my big concerns, how do you keep digital from hurting the comic shops? And really, the point with digital, to me, it should be the new newsstand. When I was a kid growing up, there was comics on the newsstands. You could buy them in drug marts and drugstores and Lawson's. We'd go there and get milk, awesome McLawson milk, and then there'd be, a spinner rack there with comics, or right behind the magazines. It always seemed like you had to dig through the magazine. There was tons of comics, and that was how you got comics as comic shops were sprouting up. And even when comic shops came into play, there were comics that were offered in direct market versions and in newsstand versions where there were sometimes two different covers and two different price points. And I'd love to see digital become the new newsstand. where instead of it being a competition for comic shops, it is a complement to comic shops the way the newsstand used to be. And I think, offering a new avenue, new opportunity for comics for readership is got to be the whole goal of that thing. And it really seemed like at these panels, that was the focus. Now, my real question at this point is, and I wish that was asked more during this, is what are you doing to reach out to that audience? And I'm going to be curious to see how they're doing that. I was glad to hear, though, that there were people speaking up and saying there are friends of mine who are going to read these digitally who would never have stepped into a comic shop before, because those are the people that I get excited about when I think of digital. It's not the current comic crowd that I get excited about for digital. It is those people who would not read them otherwise. And I'm glad to hear, even if it was only a couple people, you got to figure a couple people in San Diego bringing up and speaking about that means how many other people all over the place who either don't have access to comic shops or wouldn't go into a comic shop normally. Those are the people you want as digital customers.
In one of the panels, and I can't remember which one it was right now, they had this great discussion about digital and the digital medium and just how, it's right now really at the beginning of it. And this is going to be another evolution of comics. Maybe in the future, when you start getting these digital comics, there will be an audio track that goes along with it. And so you're sitting there, instead of reading the story,
I can tell you the panel.
the images.
I can tell you the panel. That was the Superman panel because Straczynski was saying that.
Yeah, and I thought for me that was just a great discussion, just how you're thinking these creators, these are old school creators who are thinking next generation. It's, this is, there is a future that this is just the beginning of what we're going to see in digital. And there always will be the paper collectors, but who knows what the next generation of comics are going to look like, what the medium itself is going to be. And that was something that I've never really been as strong of a digital fan as you have been. I'm a little bit older school where I do like the paper copy, and I sometimes have issues reading it electronically. But just hearing them talk, I'm like, I do that. If they had a audio track along with it, or if they had something else where if you click on this icon, another image pops up, or if they were to change around the digital, I would go that way even. And it's kind of interesting to see where this is going to go and how this is going to be. This is we're right now at the beginning of the crossroads. Someone said your silver age, your bronze age. Well, we're the beginning of the digital age, and this is going to be the next step in the next evolution of this art form that we love. So I kind of got me going, wow, this is kind of neat. And I'm on the precipice of something big here.
I do hope it's the next form of delivery a la trades. Something like that, where you're looking at a different audience. Because trades hearkened to that Vertigo crowd, back in the day, where that was huge. When it was really big with things like Sandman and Preacher and stuff like that. And there continues to be a trade audience, but I remember there was a boom there for a while where it was like, wow, that's really amazing. And that's what I'm hoping is going to happen out of that market. When you were mentioning that panel, I'm glad you actually mentioned what Straczynski was saying, because I want to talk really quick, if we could, about Superman Earth 1 Part 2.
Oh, yeah.
And I liked the idea of, they're looking at Action Comics and Superman as kind of your, larger audience-focused Superman book, whereas Earth 1 Part 2 is more of an adult focus, more of a bookstore focus, things like that, because that's where it sold so well. It was on the New York Times bestseller list and all that. And he was talking about, you got this kid Superman who he can't be with a girl the way that most normal people can because of his powers, and how being depowered by a character like Parasite or something like that would provide a unique opportunity for him. and I love how he was sharing the story about how what happens when he realizes he slept through an opportunity like that. I mean, I like stuff like that where to me the Earth 1 books, if they end up doing Earth 1 Batman, I don't know if that's still going to be. I'm guessing, this has put that on the back burner. Not guessing, I'm pretty sure that's exactly the case. But I'm hoping if they do more of these Earth 1 books, they should feel like they're very different than the main DCU books. at the core, obviously, you're going to keep the concept of the idea of the character. But I liked that about Earth 1 Superman. I thought the first one was terrific, and I thought it was terrific because it felt like a Superman story, yet it felt like it was a fresh, unique take on it because it was out of our continuity. And that should remain the case if they do any more characters in that Earth 1 format. And I hope the second one's immensely successful. I hope it's as good as the first one was, because that first one was absolutely terrific. And to have the same band back together again doing that one, it was kind of sad because one of the people who were there was getting up and making a point how it didn't seem kid appropriate, and I don't think every comic has to be. I think there should be a diverse amount of comic book media out there, where some's great for kids, some's great for teens and adults, some's great for just adults. I think that the comics as a delivery medium should not be limited to one type of audience. The story should dictate the audience, always. I think you should seek out creators who maybe can appeal to certain audiences, if that makes sense. Like if you notice, like we're not doing enough all ages books, then start looking for those creators who can develop those stories, and are very intrigued at doing cutting edge all ages material. Because I think we've seen a lot of cutting edge from comics, all ages material starting to be developed. I'm not just talking to DC, I'm talking about all over. And I think those are the creators that, like, DC and Marvel should be grabbing and embracing and cultivating to do more all-ages material, more unique all-ages material as jumping on points into comics for younger readers. Because I think it really is the quality and the amount of all-ages materials is what's going to bring them there. But I think the all-ages stuff they've got now is really terrific. I just think that's the way to do it. And I don't think you should limit. You could say, well, because it's a Superman book, it has to be all-ages. I don't agree with that at all. I don't think a Superman book has to be all ages. I'm talking about like when you're doing like an Earth 1 or something like that. I think it's okay to take a story and say, hey, this is a Superman story that, it stands on its own as being something a little more mature, and that's okay. I don't know. Do you agree with that, though? I don't know. I don't know if you're in the same boat where,
Yeah, I think, you can't, not everything you write is going to be all age appropriate. And I think actually that guy misunderstood, the person who complained about it, I think he misunderstood what story they were talking about. I think he was thinking that in the main Superman title, that story was going to play out. Because talking about a young Superman, and I think he was thinking that in the Action Comics that's going to play out. He completely missed that they were talking about Earth 1, the separate, I think he was thinking this is going to be in the main universe, and that's why the guy complained about it. Because, I don't think either. That's why I was thinking, because as soon as they started explaining they backed down immediately, saying, oh, okay. Then, especially when they started, saying, hey, all Action Comics is going to be all age appropriate. It's not going to be. This is a trade a trade that's specifically designed for adults. It's not a kid's book, and it's marked not appropriate. So that was, I think, that because that person immediately calmed down and backed down. They weren't I think it was just a misunderstanding on that one.
What do you think the age range is for the DC universe, though?
I would say high school age, even some junior high stuff.
Yeah, I would say exactly junior high to high school. I would just say just on the complexity of the material, and that's a compliment to the comics actually, because I think we're doing some pretty intricately weaved story. I would say young adult, teen audience, and like you said, middle school age. That's the group that I'm thinking of straight on through. I mean, I think that there's themes and elements that I think as you get more mature, you're going to view differently. But I think that's the audience as well, and
even to be honest, depending on the kid as well. That was one of the things about this last Italy trip, getting to spend time with my one niece. I realized just. She's got a head on her shoulder. She's a very she's a very intelligent, very she's together and she's got her stuff going on. And I was like, that was kind of a neat thing seeing this 17-year-old girl that is for all practical purposes an adult and able to make these logical, intelligent decisions. And just hearing her talk about her siblings and my other nieces and nephew and just where they are at, I'm like, what? There are kids out there who can handle the more mature stuff at a younger age. I don't think you can accurately put a blanket statement across the line saying that this is this age and up. But there is general guides. Like I still would hesitate putting like Watchmen in some people's hands just because.
See, to me, I think that there comes a certain point where parents need to be the judges of that. At certain ages, I think kids should be going into comic shops with parents. You know what I mean? And that's not just comic shops, any, bookstores, things like that, where parents can like have an active role in saying, hey, this is what you're getting, things like that. I think, when kids start getting to the age where they have their own jobs and their own money, which you're getting into the junior high years, into the high school years, is where your kids are getting their first real jobs and things like that. You know what I mean? Where they start having those opportunities. Maybe, kids babysitting, or maybe kids, they're starting to get their own income. At that point in time, I think there's been, depending on the family, some serious, development of identity and, understanding right from wrong and, what to do, things like that. And this isn't just about comics, it's about anything. I think that's why video games have ratings and things like that, because there's just a little common sense that, at a certain age point, moral values have hopefully been taught. You know what I mean? Whatever that looks like per family. But, I don't think that's up to a comic company to sit there and say, we're going to limit the kinds of stories we can tell. Comic companies aren't the parents. I've never been an advocate of that. I think that's really, I think we need to empower our families, and that, that's kind of a cool thing. But anyway, let's kind of jump back into the comic chat. As we're looking at this DCU line, one of the books that stood out for me was The Enthusiasm for Mr. Terrific, and it's sounding like a book that very unexpected for me. First of all, we found out that Karen Starr is going to be in that book, but I'm not entirely clear. Does that mean she's Power Girl? Is there a Power Girl? If so, who? Because they seem to throw out a reference to there being, be kind of a Jeff Johns threw out there. It'd be kind of a sad, state for the DC universe if Power Girl wasn't here. But I don't know if necessarily that means that the Karen Starr and Mr. Terrific is Power Girl or not. I don't know.
They made it sound like she wasn't Power Girl because they kept saying Karen Starr will be there. Karen Starr. And then as you said, Jeff made that comment about it'd be a sad state, but he never said she was Power Girl. No one flat out admitted that she is, or no one flat out said she isn't Power Girl. So I took it that we have Karen Starr but not Power Girl, and that's where I'm curious to see what's the difference there, where this is going. And part of me wonders, is this going to be all played out how they bring in the JSA? Because they did talk a little bit, reference that, down the line, those are kind of characters they would look to bring in. But even that, they didn't flat out say that they're bringing them in. So
the JSA?
Yeah.
Because you said JLA. Now, JSA characters, Dan Dio came out and said we're giving them a break for a little while.
Yeah.
So those are characters that are not on the table right now. And I think it sounds like how are we going to bring, how are we planning to bring those characters in? There are a lot of options, though, because the multiverse still exists.
Right.
See, to me, I would have zero issue if they did a JSA book set on Earth 2. Or, does it, I don't know. I mean, do you feel the same? Does it have to be set on Earth?
I don't know. Part of me, right, I like the idea that they're giving them a break and maybe they'll revisit the characters, maybe they'll bring them back in. Because for me, that says the crossover with Earth 2 or crossover with a different Earth. And that's, going back to the roots of where JSA was first introduced, that they're the alternate Earth, they're the alternate version of the Justice League over there. And I kind of like that story, and I think that'll be a neat way to bring them in. And who knows if it'll be a lasting impression that they're in, or if that'll just be an introduction and they'll stay in their own universe. For me, if I got either way, I'd be happy. I do want to see the characters again because I do like the characters, but if I get them, staying in their own universe, cool. If I get them where they come over to this universe and they become part of this universe, cool.
I want them in a monthly. Not right now. I honestly have zero issue with them putting concepts on a back burner until they come up with the right book for them. That's fine. Go ahead and do that. If you don't have a direct plan for them right now, and you're really working on launching these titles, to me, there's enough that's interesting here in September that's going to be new and fresh for me to read that I can wait. And relaunch that book when it's right. We got The Shade coming up to it, its own, 12 issue series, I think, or something like that with The Shade.
Yeah.
There's a big, mini series coming out with The Shade. I'm excited for that. There's going to be more minis along the way. It sounds like there's a second wave of titles that's in the planning stages. I'm sure that there's some that are further along in those stages. I'm excited to see what they're going to do there. But to me, give these books some legs. Give them a chance to grow. Captain Atom. Well, actually, let's talk about Mr. Terrific a little bit before we do that. Because Terrific, with him being the third smartest man, we're actually going to see how this guy thinks and how he views the world. And this guy's actually going to have adventures on other worlds and other places because of the way he kind of views everything. It's going to be interesting to see through his thinking process how it maybe, I don't know if distances himself from the people around him, but maybe affects how people around him view him because of the way he operates. I'm very intrigued by the way that they're taking him at the core from what made the character interesting and really expanding what we know about him in a way that you can only get from a solo book from a character like that.
And I like the concept of how they said it's going to have a very James Bond feel, a very adventure, just that kind of excitement they're going to pull up. And they even talk about they're going to build his rogues gallery. And that was, as soon as I heard that, I'm like, yeah, who are his rogues? Does he have a rogues gallery? Is there somebody that his regular villain? So that's what I'm curious to see, who's going to be, what kind of villains are they going to throw him up against? Is it going to be other intelligent villains? Is it going to be an alien-based type villains? Is it going to be a tech-based? Or where are we going to go with this? That's, those are some stuff that I was like, I wanted a Mr. Terrific series before, and when they announced it, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Again, this is another title where the more they talked about it, the more they told us, I was like, oh, this is neat. This is a different twist that I wasn't thinking that they would go this way with this character. Cool.
Captain Atom.
Oh, man.
That was a series that I was already excited for. One of the things that I really loved is this idea of the artwork doing a different kind of ink wash for the character because for storytelling purposes. I love when art is altered because of the story. It mirrors it. I think that's, I always reference the book The Shield as being one of those that, kind of stood out for me recently as being something unique and interesting. Captain Atom has that potential to be that book. I always love Freddie Williams II's art anyway. Just hearing the enthusiasm for like, hey, I'm doing something a little different, and it really is because of this character's whole way of operating and stuff like that. I think it's going to be just a really cool look for the book that matches the story. What a cool idea, and I love the collaboration between the two of them. I think we saw a great relationship between him and what was going on with his Final Crisis Aftermath run, and then into JSA All Stars. But, to see him with J.T. Cruel working on this Captain Atom, where we see this guy who's isolated from the world because of his powers and what's going on there, that's something that that's one that's really had me interested since I saw the blurb. The blurb was really one of the things that got me when I heard the premise. I'm like, ooh, this could be kind of neat.
Yeah, this was another one that kind of got me in trouble at work. Because as Freddie is sitting there explaining what he's doing with the art, I kind of out loud was like, ooh, Freddie. And that's all I said. And I said it out loud. And once again, people are looking at me funny because just the way I said it. And they're like, what are you listening to over there? I'm like, podcast panel. And artist is doing a really cool thing with the book. And I'm, oh, dang it. I said it out loud again.
Hawkman. The Savage Hawkman for me, just hearing, when you hear the artist Philip Tan talking about how that's one of his favorite characters at DC, and having the opportunity, I know they're, revamping him and working on him that way. I don't have any issue with that. I've been through how many Hawkman revamps, but in all honesty, hearing him talk about what he wants, the character to come across as, how there's going to be some changes in his costume that, things are going to, and I think there's going to be a lot of his history that is going to be intact. But I think what we're going to see here is a new status quo for him moving forward. I actually really was encouraged by the fact they were dodging questions about Hawkgirl. That leads me to believe that we were taking a look at that blurb about the archaeologist that he's working with, that type of thing. What if that is Hawkgirl? I don't know. I'm very intrigued by the whole thing and seeing what's what with that character. I like that there was the focus on his costuming and, that it's going to have, they always talked about how long it takes him to put on his armor and things like that. Well, what if we think about that a new way? And that was actually something, we can actually talk about this a little bit, that wasn't something exclusive to Hawkman. The way constructs are created is something that they're doing a little differently now. The way that Barry Allen's costume works is something that's going to be a little different now. I like that they're looking at this as a fresh start, new looks. What can we do visually now that maybe we couldn't do in the past? And how can we have fun with that? With the fact that these are going to be read on digital screens and in paper comics, how can we take advantage of that and really have some fun doing some new, fresh, and exciting things that are relevant both for the paper and the digital medium? And I like that because you got to think of both mediums, and you got to have a good time with both. I shouldn't say mediums, delivery methods, because they're delivery methods of the same medium. And I found that to be really particularly intriguing when they were talking about Hawkman, and I'm like, ooh, this is going to be fun. And I loved hearing that I'm going to get, from a guy who went from having no Hawkman, to now being able to have him in his monthly book and knowing that he's going to be a regular at some point in Justice League. I'm like, yes! I'm so excited.
Now, when they were talking about his new arch enemy and it's not going to be half set, was that a little disconcerting for you? Or?
No, because, they did mention, too, in there that he is going to have some of his regular rogues, and we're going to see him maybe dealing with them in a new way and things like that. So they didn't divorce from... because they did make mention, Philip Tan made mention of his regular rogues being a part of it as well. So I don't have a problem with it. I actually like the idea of new villains. That, these creators are saying, hey, let's have some fun doing new villains and new stories and all that. And that doesn't mean that they aren't going to, because they've also made mentions of the classic villains that we want as well. I'm all for adding to the mythos. We wouldn't have some of the characters that we do now if it wasn't for cultivating. Look at Detective Comics right now. James Jr., they took a character who's been kind of on the back burner forever and made him a new and exciting villain. You know what I mean? So the idea of Tony Daniel and Philip Tan bringing some new blood into the Hawkman series to make it new and exciting. As a Hawkman fan who's discouraged he hasn't had a Hawkman book in a while, to hear that you got a creative team that's going out of their way to make that book exciting and must read, I'm on board. I think that's great. So, new villains, new stories, just make it good. Because I want to read it. So I'm psyched. I'm really psyched. Did you hear anything? I didn't hear, and I haven't heard all the panels yet. Anything about Firestorm?
No, I have not heard anything about Firestorm.
Because that's a book I'm very excited about, obviously, because of the creative team involved and how do these two characters... It's one of those things that I'm wondering if they're being deliberately mum, because you don't want to reveal too much about what Jason and Ronnie are going through, and what actually happens. Because that's what I'm excited about the first issue. I want to see, what does Firestorm look like? What happens, and is this branching off of, I'm guessing, Brightest Day? Are you still feeling that?
I'm still feeling that this is branching off of Brightest Day. I'm thinking that Brightest Day happened when they were younger.
Yeah.
It's the whole kind of de-aging thing. So they went through Brightest Day as younger as these high school kids, not as a college age.
I'm guessing Aquaman went through Brightest Day as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Aquaman went through Brightest Day. And I'm thinking that whole... And that's part of the... John's kind of commented on just the little bit of an attitude that people have... one towards him as a creator when he says, because people don't really get how cool Aquaman is, and Aquaman's going to get some of that kind of attitude, directed towards him. And it sounds to me like he's going to respond just a little bit back to people. So I'm thinking there's going to be a little bit of attitude. There's going to be a little bit of, you really don't want to mess with me because I can throw you to the moon type of just, style. And just, he's not going to be just the friendly talk to the fishies kind of guy.
You read Tide and Time.
What?
And you read Tide in Time. That
Yes.
made me a believer. I mean, that led me into the Peter David series, which then the series did a lot of what you're talking about. So he is a cool character.
Yes,
I'm with you.
yeah.
I mean, you loved Tide in Time when we read it. So
Yeah, and I loved him. I loved the way he wrote him through Blackest Night with Mira, and just she's going to be around for the series. So I'm really excited about Aquaman. I don't want to sound like I'm not excited. I found it very funny that that Jeff Johns is just running into the commentary, and he's going to make people a believer, and that was something I was like, amen.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that's, to me, that's the point of when they said they're focusing on these 52 initially before, announcing new titles and stuff like that. I like that. To me, that's refreshing. I like the idea of then maybe doing something like the Huntress miniseries that's going to be coming up by Paul Levitz.
Yeah.
I think it's really important then to, while they're doing this, do a miniseries here and there to launch some interesting new characters, see what sticks, what people like. Huntress, I'm hoping, would lead into, if people like her, into her own series, because that's a character who I think, I would love to read monthly.
Oh yeah, and you're talking Huntress, and Wonder Woman popped in my head. That's the one I'm still very curious about where they're going to go with this, because for me, I always liked the fact that she wasn't just this really butt-kicking warrior, but she was an agent of peace. And they said that we're still going to see the human side of Diana. They're going to explore that, but it did sound like she would be a little bit harder. She will be a little bit more of a warrior. There will be more of the warrior in her. So I'm kind of curious to see where they're going with that, what the balance is going to be.
I liked what they were talking about because I didn't even think of this, the gods.
Yeah.
They're going to be revamping the gods, and we're not necessarily going to have them identified when we see them at first, because they're going to be so new and fresh that we're going to have to guess who's who. I kind of like that.
Yeah, I do too.
Because
that was something I was looking forward to.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a book that, and do you see that, I'm wondering if she's going to have the pants or not now, because I've seen newer images of her in that book without the pants.
Well, they made the one joke in the one panel about the pants are retractable.
But I think that's because people knew about... Have you seen some of the new pages from that book?
Yeah.
It's the new look color set. You know how the new look has a little bit of a different color scheme to it?
Yeah.
And the new styling. Basically take that and give her, do it on her old outfit. Mm-hmm. And that's what you got.
Oh, okay. See, I like the pants, personally. I think I like the look of the pants and just the outfit and the jacket even. And
the jacket's not part of the new outfit.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying what I like.
Yeah.
It's just and I'm not even going to knock the old look or even a retractable non-pants outfit. It's both are good-looking outfits. Both are, she does look pretty cool in either one. But for me, just personal choice, I would throw the pants on.
Now, I totally took the retractable pants thing as a joke.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't have pants in the new artwork, and I think that was their way of kind of responding to that. I'm going to go with you on the pants thing and say the new outfit, the one that they, Jim Lee was thrown out there on the cover of Justice League. I liked the new one, meaning Phase 3, I guess. You had the original outfit, then you had the one, that was in this new story that Straczynski was doing, and which I liked. But the newest outfit, I thought, was a nice mix of what I liked about the Straczynski run outfit and the original. And the pants really worked for me in that outfit. But I guess I don't really care which outfit they put her in. I just want some darn good Wonder Woman storytelling.
Yes.
And I've honestly been enjoying Wonder Woman consistently in this run. I'm talking about the current run, all the way through. So I'm hoping with this new #1 that we get that same quality of storytelling we've been getting with Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's been cool. So I just hope it gets people on board and, these sales numbers... start going. Maybe hopefully Azzarello and Cliff Chang will draw people in and make people see why Wonder Woman's cool. So I don't really... Does the outfit... Let me ask you a question. If the outfit was any of the 4, I guess, because now we've got 4 different outfit versions, does that matter to you?
No. Flat out does not matter which one she's wearing. if I had to pick my favorite, as I said, it's the pants one. So
Which pants one?
I kind of like that very first, the Straczynski pants outfit. With the jacket and the full outfit. I like that. It was something that when I first initially saw it, I didn't, and then I was like, you know what? This is pretty cool. I'm digging this, and so I'm going to go with Straczynski for my choice. But to be honest, I'm not going to complain on any of them if I get a cool Wonder Woman story, if I get a cool Diana story. And for me, you have to have both. You have to have Diana and you have to have Wonder Woman in it. And you need to have that, not just the warrior, but you need both. She is as I said, the agent of peace and the warrior. She lives by the code, but she isn't the promotion of war. She's the protection of peace. Ares is the promotion of war, and she's the antithesis of Ares. But to fight Ares, you do need to know how to throw down. You do need to, be this butt kicker. So she has those skills, but that's not who she is. That's not all she is. It's about, her heart. It's about the human side of her. It's about that, that compassion, that never-ending compassion and hope that is Wonder Woman. That's the thing I don't want to lose in any Wonder Woman story I ever read.
Wonder Woman in a relationship, how do you feel about that? Like, do they, I'm not saying that they announced that. It came up at the panel because they were talking about where we finally see Superman hook up with Wonder Woman. I think that's something we might see in the Justice League 5 years before arc. But I would be curious to see her in a relationship of some sort. Does it need to be a superpowered person, or can it be a human?
It can be anybody, to be honest with you. And with Wonder Woman, I would be comfortable with her seeing a human, seeing her with a superpowered. I think, just as, again, the nature of the woman is that compassion and that love. And I can't imagine her not sharing with somebody and not, allowing that, in her life. And I think that would be a nice way to show a side of her. And, for me, I don't know. People always say Superman, and if Lois isn't in the picture, I think that'd be kind of cool. But I don't know. I could see Bruce being a little bit, he's Bruce Wayne. He's got some style to him. He's got the strut. I could see him attracting Wonder Woman.
I'd like to see, and we've seen that before with Batman and Wonder Woman. I actually wouldn't mind seeing that explored either. I'm going to be curious to see what his relationship's like with Catwoman.
Yeah.
With what they're doing with her. What is that role like between them? And that strikes me as interesting. Superman with his love triangle, with there being a love interest for Lois. I've got to admit, I am interested in that. I am curious to see what that's going to be like. Do you think that Superman being married diminishes him? I mean, I shouldn't say diminishes him, but writes him into a corner, paints him into a corner. Do you agree with that aspect of him? Is he more interesting not married?
I don't think he's more interesting not married. For me, I always like, the Superman and Lois relationship, but if we're still telling the story and they're at a different level of the relationship, then I still think it'd be interesting. It's the fact that she's still in his life and there's still something going on, whether it's not, it's not the relationship. She's not, he's not the love of her life, and she may not even be his yet. Who knows? But there is that something. And so every time I read the stories and every time I see the point where they may almost get together, I'll still have in my head, okay, they're going to get together eventually. It was the same thing in Smallville when they first introduced Lois. And, there was points and times when I was giddy just seeing, they're getting together. Here it comes. Oh, so close. Yeah, now they're going, oh. And you see that roller coaster of them, how many years it took for them after they introduced her for them to realize their feelings for each other. Then they realize and they work through the problems, and then bam, at the end they're married. And so I wouldn't mind seeing that play out in the comic books. I wouldn't mind seeing that kind of, relationship happen. And Lois Lane is a cool character. If she's not Superman's love interest or Clark Kent's love interest, if she's still this cool character and she's still a part of the story, then I'll be happy. So again, that's another thing where she's in the book, she's part of the story, so I'm curious to see where it goes, and I'm not angry about the fact that they're not married.
No, I'm not either. Man, I guess, see, to me, I guess my worry is that because they're doing this, they wouldn't consider marrying them again in the future. I do think that I don't want to see every superhero married. I don't think that necessarily needs to be a logical progression. But I think there's certain couples, like, there's something comforting in Clark and Lois winding up together. And I don't think them being married, it's an issue I have with Spider-Man when they took away the marriage from him. I think, you sometimes you have to get creative with a married couple and come up. I think they offer new and unique storytelling opportunities that you don't get from single characters. And that's why I think you can't do it with everybody, because otherwise you're telling the same stories with every character. That's why I don't want to see every character that way. I don't have an issue with what they're doing now. And I really don't. I actually, the more that I'm getting comfortable with it, understanding what they're doing and how they're going back to Superman's roots and kind of re-explaining who he is for today and going through that whole process with him, because of the fact that they've noticed diminishing sales and things like that. I get it. I get what they're doing. Let's revamp this book. Let's make it exciting. Let's get people going. I think that's cool. And you're not ending the marriage. You can't have Superman get divorced. I don't want to see that. I think that falls outside of the realm of who the character is. So I'd much rather have them do this and say, down the road, if we hit a point where it seems logical and interesting and exciting to get them married again and kind of go that route, we can do it. I don't have a problem with that. I would hate to see it going to the point, though, where they say you can't do that with the character. What do you think about the suit of armor? I guess this is the one that, for me, probably the most interesting point with Superman to me is the suit of armor. Do you like it?
Yes.
Really?
Flat out, yes. I really enjoy it. And, just hearing the people talk and hear people complain about it, I was like, you know what? One, it's going to be part of the story and it's going to be told in it. But two, something I started thinking about. Again, present day, Superman in the universe. I would want to have an armor type of clothing just so the appearance that I'm not so invulnerable. I don't want the world to know that I'm 100% invulnerable. I want them to think, hey, I'm relying on this armor, or I'm relying on some tech gadgets. I always used to think that it would be neat if Superman put like fake rocket boots on his feet, making it look like that's how he was actually flying, because he didn't want people to know he could fly, or have like a visor over his eyes when he shoots the heat vision, making people think, hey, that's what it is. It's not actually me. And for me, I'm wondering if that's where they're going with this. He's using this appearance of this costume to make people think that he's not as strong as he is. He's not as powerful as he is, just so people won't be as scared of him.
See, I think what they're doing with it is, and there's been references to the storytelling reason being something to do with his Kryptonian heritage, and that suit having something to do with that. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what it is. Like why? And there was also the impression that we're going to see him gradually, his powers growing gradually. So the power set we see him with, like for example, in Action Comics initially, he's going to be leaping tall buildings.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe his power set isn't where we think it is.
Could be.
And I don't know. I might be wrong on that. When I heard that the suit was storytelling purposes, meaning that the armor was going to get there and we're really going to explain the suit and why he has it, something which really hasn't been done other than the fact that it was sewn, by Martha Kent.
His mom.
Yeah, which... Yeah. I'm so torn on that because I love Jonathan and Martha Kent, but I keep telling myself, no, we're telling a new story now, and it's being, we're taking the Superman mythos and we're kind of revamping it the way that we did back in '86, and I got to remember that before predating '86, the Kents were long gone, so those were characters who were not there until the Byrne revamp, so that's something I've got to go back and say, predating '86, they weren't a part of his storytelling. So, Jonathan Kent was, long gone, certainly. So, I don't know. They've got me interested. I'm kind of curious to see what's going to go on here and how this is going to work with these characters. And like they always said, there's always opportunities to bring those things back in a different way if they need
change,
to.
And there will be evolution still of characters. And I think within 5 years, we're going to see Lois and Clark in a solid dating. I don't think we'll see them married yet, but we'll definitely see them as a couple within 5 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I got to give it a chance. I got to see September. It's the Superman titles, and specifically action and Superman, because we saw the action. I think the first arc is 5 years earlier, and then Grant's story and George Perez's stories are then going to be set in the current continuity. Yeah. Both of them. So I don't know. I'm curious.
Well, they kind of said it was like Action Comics is the 0 issue, and JLA 1 is the issue 1. Right. So when you're looking at time-wise.
Yeah. Those first arcs are going to be interesting to me, because I do want to see, what does Superman look like in this world. I don't know. They've got me intrigued. Any other books you can think of, Jim, that maybe we didn't cover or talk about yet? I know we haven't listened to all the panels yet. Like, I haven't listened to the Green Lantern panel yet.
Yeah, me neither.
And it was not because I'm not interested in Green Lantern. It was, I knew the Green Lantern universe was pretty much staying the same. But I'm sure on our next episode we'll come back and talk more about the Green Lantern. I also haven't had a chance to listen to the Vertigo panels yet. I'm going to listen to those. I don't think there was any of the DC Universe panels I missed otherwise, but if there is something, I'll listen to those and we can kind of follow up on our next episode. For any of our listeners who are listening to this, if there's, I guess I didn't give you a chance to answer, Jim. Was there anything else that you think we missed? Or
no?
Okay. For any of our listeners who didn't get a chance to comment yet or call in, feel free to call our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. And that is in our show notes and up on our website. We'd love to have your thoughts and comments. Did you listen to the San Diego panels? Did you read the news online? Whatever you did. Did the news get you more excited for September? Are there books that you're picking up now maybe that you weren't going to before? What titles are standing out for you and why? Are you an all 52 grabber, or are you picking up selected titles? What's helping you make your decisions? I'm very curious to hear from our listeners. As a matter of fact, I'll put a poll up this week, on just that. But I'd love you to call in with some personal comments on what you're doing and why. How are you making your decisions on the 52 books and your purchases? Did it make you walk away altogether? We've heard some of that from people saying that, this might make them walk away. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm just really curious to see what people are thinking on this one. And from speaking for myself, there's somebody I was very nervous and tentative, and these San Diego panels turned me into I'm all on board. I'm super excited for what's going on in September, but I don't know if everybody else is feeling the same way I am. How about you, Jim? Did this change you at all, or were you did you walk in the same way that you walked out?
Oh, no. This definitely changed me. This definitely invigorated me and excited me. You know how I was always saying there was a little bit of fear? Yeah. This pretty much almost washed away all of the fear. There's still some stuff where I'm curious as to what's going to happen, but I got really excited about titles that I was only interested in. I'm now excited for them. And so this definitely was, I needed to hear this stuff. I needed to hear them talk. And just, as I said, that one panel where he talks about just what went into how long they were planning this and how this came about, and just what they were looking at and saying, okay, we got to do this, we got to do this. And it was just the planning that they went into this really made me comfortable with their decision. I'm like, okay, this is what they're going with. This is who they are, and I'm looking forward to the ride.
I needed to hear Philip Tan and Jeff Johns talking about two different appearances from Hawkman for his own solo series and Justice League. I'm really not making a joke of that. I am so Hawk excited for September to see his solo series and then know that he is going to be. I'm guessing he's not going to be in the initial arc of Justice League, but I might be wrong there.
Yeah, it sounded like a later issue is the way they described it.
But he's going to be. I think he's going to be. He's on the team.
Yeah.
He's going to be a part of the larger team. So I'm thrilled as can be.
It's going to be Hawktastic.
Yeah. Oh, you know what book we didn't talk about, Jim? Green Arrow.
Oh, yeah.
I actually would really like to talk about that before we wrap up, if we could.
Sure.
Because that was one, I was trying to think, I'm like, boy, there's a J.T. Cruel book, I think I'm forgetting Green Arrow. Because it was funny, just on my screen, I have like that Windows 7, and I have a lot of desktop patterns that I get from DC Source blog and from their webpage. Whenever they post out those images, I save them and have them rotating. And Green Arrow literally just popped up and like, oh, we didn't talk about him. Trick arrows are, as they said, trick arrows is kind of a interesting stigma that you want to, it's not as simple as that. But the arrows are back, and it's more using technology and things like that we're seeing. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I'm actually looking forward to that. I think it'll be kind of neat. On one hand, I was sitting there and, when the first initial just rumor and talking about trick arrows coming back, I was like, part of me kind of liked him shooting regular arrows because they explained why he went with the regular arrows and why he, what he did. And here they're kind of bringing it back, but it's not just going to be bringing back the goofy trick arrows. They're also beefing up his villain set. And if you're going up against a meta-powered villain, you need something more than a standard broadhead. You need the specialty arrows. You need just something to kind of give you an edge or equal the playing ground. We're still going to get some classic Ollie Queen, and we're going to get some just moments, but we're going to get a little bit of tech side. We're probably going to get a little bit of fun and adventure into there as well. So I'm definitely cool with the specialty arrows being brought back in, and part of me hopes we get an arrow family and a team arrow eventually, but I don't think it's going to be anything initially, so that could be something that could later on develop and grow.
Well, and one of the things that I really like is in Smallville, he used tech and, was more advanced, and, there was I liked that aspect of the character on that show. So bringing that into this series, I think, is a really good thing. And, I want there to be kind of I've always liked Green Arrow when he's had kind of a swashbuckling nature to him, and I'm not talking about like silly campy, ha ha ha, I'm not looking for that type of thing. I'm talking about like an adventure aspect to the character. I love that the villains are going to be, we're going to make him step up and, try to overcome the odds and those type of things, and using technology for that purpose. Is something that's great for me, but there should be something about Ollie. He's in the past he's been like the womanizer and that type of thing with the character. But the reason why is he's always had a certain swagger about him, and you need that back with the character. You need that kind of. There's an excitement to him, and you want to hang out with him, and he's that fun guy. And then every so often you want to pull him aside and say, "Dude, what are you doing?"
Relax a little, tone it down.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about with the ladies and stuff like that, where he throws aside those relationships and things without necessarily meaning to. So I'm curious to see what he's like and what they're doing with the character and how much of his history's in place.
Yeah, he is one of the ones I'm curious about because he's done the died and come back and changed around and twist and turned, and where is he going to be in the universe? And him and Black Canary, is that whole relationship gone, or is it the marriage is gone but the relationship was there? There's a lot of questions on this kind of character because again, he's someone who's had multiple lives and multiple variations to him. So I don't know. I want to see what's going to happen. I think he's also a character that has such a solid base that as long as you don't get rid of that solid base, you're still going to get a good Green Arrow story. And I think they're keeping a nice solid base with him.
Yeah, and he's one of those characters. I'm guessing if Roy never had Leon,
yeah,
I'm guessing he was never married. Why would you have Clark Kent not be married and have him be married? I don't see how that serves. I'm curious. I'm curious to see what it is. I think my bigger question is going to be: was Mia ever Speedy?
Yeah, Mia is the character that I was always protective of in the past, and in a way, if Mia was never Speedy, then maybe she doesn't have AIDS, and that would be kind of nice, for her, not to be dealing with that. But that was such a great story when it was told. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Felt bad for her, but just overall story wise, it was something that was kind of enjoyable. And
I'm gonna actually correct myself here. Hang on, because that was done during the Kevin Smith run. Am I right? She was brought in. Or was that Winnick?
No, that was Winnick. Well, I think she was introduced in Kevin Smith, but Winnick went. The AIDS Winnick introduced the AIDS and all of that stuff and made her Speedy.
That's where it was. Okay, because I was trying to remember when she first appeared, and I'm like, I thought she first appeared during the Kevin Smith run, but you're right. That's where that all happened. So I'm guessing if they're saying pivotal stories for a lot of these characters did happen, like Starfire. Oh, Red Hood. we got a couple things to talk about. We'll jump into that in a second because we didn't talk about Starfire. If they're saying these pivotal stories happen for a lot of characters, then that would be one. I would guess Quiver would be considered a story. So maybe Green Arrow did die and come back. Maybe that did happen.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would take that away from the character, but I wonder if his marriage did. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I can see them taking away the marriage, but not, the relationship.
Yeah.
Just the ending of that, where they got married. I think that whole thing probably didn't happen. But, the pivotal events in his life did. So there was the relationship, and there was everything that he dealt with, but is my guess.
Yeah. I want to see what his relationship's like with Hal.
Yeah.
Red Hood, and what's going on with Red Hood and with Arsenal, and, of course, Starfire. And we know now that she did have a relationship with Dick Grayson. Was it in the Teen Titans? I don't know. I don't think we're going to know what happened with that original Teen Titans group until Justice League, because I said they said they were going to explain in there what Cyborg's whole backstory was. So I think Justice League will give us some clarification in that initial arc as to what that whole deal is. But she did have a relationship with Dick Grayson. We know that much.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be all the Teen Titans and everything that happened there. Is where the relationship is playing out, and I'm guessing that when the relationship goes bad is when she kind of like drifts away, and somehow she and Hood and Arsenal are kind of getting together as just the people who shouldn't be traveling together who end up traveling together. Because they described her as just this alien who is, just trying to deal with humanity and just the goofiness that is humans and the crazy stuff we do. And so she's kind of the fish out of water, but, it's still, she's an outsider looking in. And it's more than just a big, alien with red hair. It's, she does look at life differently. And it's Red Hood and Arsenal who are with her, who are also, you think about it, they look at life a little bit differently as well. So it's, the misfits kind of, being together and dealing with the problems.
Here's my question, though. If Superman and Action if Action Comics is basically the Zero issue, Justice League with Cyborg in it is year one, or issue one, how is he in Titans?
I think he formed Titans. I think he is going to be older than the Titans, and I think that he kind of brought in the sidekick heroes and was their mentor. Is how I think it's going to play out. I think they de-aged everybody, but I don't think they de-aged Cyborg. I think he's going to be his age and kind of that mentor role.
Well, what if he was a teen when he joined the Justice League initially? And there's a storyteller reason why he formed or joined the Titans or was a part of the Titans, whatever, with Dick Grayson and all them, and grew up with them. And then in present day, he is, 5 years later, who he is on the team. I don't know. I'm curious to see how that's all going to play out too, because we're going to have an interesting gap with Justice League, and an opportunity for those stories to have happened after the founding of the team. I'm excited. So
yeah, I kind of chuckled when they asked about Jason Todd, what color is his hair?
Oh yeah.
They wanted the Ginger Brigade, where all of them had red hair, and I was laughing because they're like, "Yeah, Ron Weasley can't be the only representative."
Black. I like that, actually.
Yeah.
I think that it kind of harkens to the version of Jason Todd that I prefer.
See, I liked the fact that his natural hair was red and Bruce made him dye his hair black.
Oh, and wouldn't that still would be the case.
Yeah. But, with him having dark hair, I think, they're saying that he doesn't have I think they're whitewashing that and not having it be the case.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Come on, Skreel. Let's pay these Plutonian beam makers a visit.
Just a quick reminder that our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Be sure to check out all 52 DC #1 titles are at that special discount. Regular price $159.48, 50% off, only $79.74. I want to thank DCBService.com for providing that amazing discount. Over at InStockTrades.com, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Volume 1, the trade paperback. If you do not have this one, do yourself a favor. Alan Moore, art and cover by Kevin O'Neill. Ladies and gentlemen, the hour is at hand. The object of your desire has arrived. The award-winning series by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill is available in a softcover edition. Thrill to the immortal adventures of Mina Harker, Alan Quartermain, Captain Nemo, the Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll, and last but not least, Mr. Hyde. This marvelous band of adventurers is recruited by the Empire in her hour of need to discover the secret of Whitechapel and the nefarious plans of the sinister Dr. Hasford. And once again, this is regularly $14.95, 38% off, only $9.27, so it's really under $10. You can join us for this discussion. Do remember, though, if you've got a lot of hardcovers and trades you've been considering purchasing, orders of $50 or more give you free shipping from InStockTrades.com. So I want to thank them for supporting our show. Jim, our next episode, we're going to talk comics. I don't know what comics, because I think you've had a lot of stuff since you've been gone that you're getting caught up on and stuff like that. So we'll definitely put something up on the Twitter or show website or forums or Google Plus or something like that to let you guys know what's going on. But there's a lot of books that we have an opportunity to discuss, and we will. As we head into, we're heading into our last month of the current universe, the wrap-up of Flashpoint. Got a lot coming, and you and I are going to be doing League of Extraordinary Gentlemen sometime in August, so
Woohoo!
A lot of big things coming up as we kind of say goodbye to the current version of the universe, sort of. I'm almost leery I don't feel that way anymore. It's kind of, because I do feel like this is a storytelling move, so we're not really saying goodbye, we're watching it shift. But I do think there's books and things we're going to have to say goodbye to this month, and concepts that we're going to see wrap up and come to a close, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see how all these stories are ending. So,
come on, Sean. Never say goodbye. Never say goodbye.
We will see everyone next week.
Bye.
That's why I had to do that there.
Flying through space and time, 1,000 different lifetimes. Faded for love and flaws and incredibly clear sightlines. Swinging your mace around, such a practical outlook. Helping the JSA and occasionally supporting your own book. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see. Hawkman, your plan and what you do to me. Hawkman. The villains are closing in, be they Thanin Guard or Egyptian. Working so hard to thwart you and Hawkgirl's mission. The odds are not on your side, and danger seems to stack up. Things would be so much easier if you would just call for backup. Hawkman, eagle eyes can't see.